The phone rang at exactly 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night, the kind of late call that makes your heart drop into your stomach. Imani Carter sat up in bed, her brown eyes adjusting to the darkness of her bedroom. She reached for her cell phone on the nightstand, squinting at the bright screen. Nicole. Her sister's name glowed there, and for a moment, Imani considered letting it go to voicemail. They hadn't spoken in 3 months, not since their last argument about their mother's care. But something made her answer. Hello? Imani. Nicole's voice came through the speaker, and there was something in her tone that sent ice through Imani's veins. Not grief. Not sadness. Something else entirely. I have news. You should sit down. I'm already in bed, Nicole. What's going on? It's Mom. Nicole paused, and Imani could hear her sister breathing on the other end. She died last night. Heart attack. It was sudden. She didn't suffer. The words hit Imani like a physical blow. Her hand flew to her mouth and tears immediately sprang to her eyes. Their mother, Patty, had been healthy at her last checkup just 2 weeks ago. Imani had taken her to that appointment herself, had sat in the waiting room reading magazines while her mother saw the doctor. Dr. Hayes had said everything looked fine. Her blood pressure was good. Her heart was strong. What? No, that can't be right. I just saw her on Sunday. We had lunch together. She was fine. Well, she's not fine now. She's dead. Nicole's voice was flat, matter-of-fact. The funeral is Friday at Riverside Chapel. I've already made all the arrangements. Imani's mind was racing. Something felt wrong. Her mother had been laughing and healthy just 5 days ago, telling stories about their childhood, making plans for her upcoming birthday party. Wait, when did this happen? Why didn't you call me immediately? Why didn't the hospital call me? I'm her emergency contact. Things happened fast, Imani. I was with her when it happened. I'm handling everything. I need to see her. Where is she now? Which hospital? That's not possible. I already had her taken to the funeral home. The viewing is Thursday evening. Nicole cleared her throat. There's something else you need to know. Mom changed her will 6 months ago. She left everything to me. The house, the savings, the life insurance, all of it. You get nothing. Imani felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. What are you talking about? Mom would never do that. Well, she did. I have the will right here, properly notarized and everything. Maybe if you had been around more, if you had actually cared about her instead of being so busy with your perfect little life, things would be different. But you made your choices and now you have to live with them. Nicole, that's not fair. I saw Mom every week. I took her to her appointments, helped her with groceries, spent time with her. You barely visited. Believe what you want. The lawyer will be contacting you about the will. The funeral is at 2 p.m. on Friday. You can come or not, I don't really care. Nicole's voice took on a sharp edge. Oh, and one more thing. Don't bother trying to contest the will. It's ironclad. Mom made her wishes very clear. She wanted me to have everything because I was the daughter who was actually there for her. The line went dead. Imani sat there in the darkness, her phone still pressed to her ear, tears streaming down her face. Her mother couldn't be gone. It didn't make sense. None of it made sense. And where was Brandon? Her husband should have been in bed beside her, should have heard the phone ring, should be comforting her right now. But his side of the bed was empty and cold. She looked at the clock. Almost midnight. Brandon had said he was working late again the 3rd time this week. His investment banking job had always demanded long hours, but lately, it seemed like he was never home. Imani wiped her tears and called her mother's cell phone. It rang once, twice, 3 times, then went to voicemail. Her mother's cheerful voice came on. Hi there. You've reached Patty Carter. I can't come to the phone right now, but leave me a message and I'll call you back as soon as I can. Have a blessed day. The sound of her mother's voice made Imani sob harder. She ended the call without leaving a message and tried again. And again. Each time it went to voicemail. She called her mother's home phone. No answer. Something was very wrong. Imani got out of bed and walked downstairs in her pajamas, turning on lights as she went. The house felt too empty, too quiet. She went to the kitchen and poured herself a glass of water with shaking hands. Her mind kept replaying Nicole's words. The coldness in her sister's voice. The way she had delivered news of their mother's death like she was reading a grocery list. And that comment about the will. Why would their mother change her will and leave everything to Nicole? It made no sense. Patty had always been fair with both her daughters, always made sure they knew they were equally loved. Even when Nicole had dropped out of college, even when she had maxed out credit cards and needed constant help, Patty had never played favorites. Imani was reaching for her phone to call the hospitals in the area when she heard a sound behind her. She spun around, her heart pounding. Someone was standing in her kitchen doorway. For a moment, Imani thought she was hallucinating, that grief had somehow manifested a vision. Because standing there in a blue dress, looking very much alive, was her mother. "Baby girl," Patty said softly, her brown eyes filled with concern. "We need to talk." Imani's glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the kitchen floor, water spreading across the tiles. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process what she was seeing. "Mom?" The word came out as barely a whisper. Patty stepped carefully around the broken glass and pulled her daughter into a tight hug. She was solid and real and very much alive. She smelled like the lavender lotion she always wore. Her heart was beating steadily against Imani's ear. "I'm here, baby. I'm right here. But Nicole just called. She said you died. She said there's a funeral on Friday." Imani pulled back, looking at her mother's face, touching her cheeks, her shoulders, making sure she was real. "I don't understand." Patty's expression hardened in a way Imani had rarely seen. "I know what Nicole said. I was listening on the extension in the guest room. I've been staying here for the past 3 days, ever since I found out what your sister was planning." "What are you talking about? What is she planning?" "Let's sit down. This is going to take a while to explain, and none of it is good." They moved to the living room, Patty settling on the couch while Imani sat beside her, still holding her mother's hand, still half convinced this was some kind of dream. "3 days ago," Patty began, "I went to visit Nicole at her apartment. I wanted to surprise her, maybe take her to lunch. I still had the spare key she gave me years ago. When I let myself in, she wasn't there, but her laptop was open on the kitchen table. I wasn't trying to snoop, baby, I promise. But the screen was on, and I saw my own face staring back at me." "What do you mean?" "Nicole had been creating fake documents. A fake death certificate with my name on it. She had obituaries written, funeral arrangements planned, everything. I saw emails to a lawyer about my will, except I never wrote any new will. And then I saw messages between her and Brandon." Imani felt her blood turn to ice. "Brandon? My Brandon?" Patty nodded, her eyes sad. "They've been having an affair, honey? For at least 6 months, maybe longer. And they've been planning this together. Planning to fake my death, forge documents, and split everything. My house, my savings, your money, your house, all of it." The room started spinning. Imani stood up abruptly, pacing across the carpet. "No. That can't be right. Brandon would never do that. He loves me. We've been married for 7 years. I know this is hard to hear. And Nicole? My own sister?" Imani's voice cracked. "Why would she do this?" "Money, baby. Greed. And apparently she's always been jealous of you. That came out pretty clear in those messages." Patty stood and walked to her daughter, placing gentle hands on her shoulders. "I took pictures of everything on my phone. I have evidence. Lots of it. I need to see." Patty pulled out her phone and showed Imani the photos. There were dozens of them. Text messages between Nicole and Brandon that made Imani's stomach turn. Romantic messages. Explicit photos. And worse, detailed plans about how they would pull off the fraud. One message from Nicole read, "Once we declare her legally dead and get the death certificate processed, the life insurance pays out immediately. That's $500,000 right there. Plus her house is worth at least $400,000. We split everything 50-50 just like we agreed." Brandon's response, "What about Imani? She's going to ask questions. Let her ask. By the time she figures anything out, the money will be long gone. We can be in the Bahamas before she even gets a lawyer. And honestly, who's going to believe her over us? I'm the grieving daughter. You're the supportive husband. She'll just look crazy." There were more messages. Plans to forge Patty's signature on a new will. Discussions about which funeral home would be the least thorough in checking documentation. They had even picked out matching watches they wanted to buy once they got the money. Imani felt physically sick. She ran to the bathroom and threw up, her mother following and holding her hair back, rubbing her back just like she had done when Imani was a little girl. After rinsing her mouth and washing her face, Imani looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were red and swollen. She looked shattered. And she felt shattered. The two people she should have been able to trust most in this world had betrayed her in the worst possible way. "How long have you known?" Imani asked, her voice rough. "Since I found those messages 3 days ago. I came straight here, parked my car in your garage so Nicole wouldn't see it if she drove by, and I've been staying in your guest room. You work such long shifts at the hospital, and Brandon's been coming home so late, I didn't want to tell you at first. I wanted to be sure, wanted to gather more evidence. Does anyone else know you're here? Just you. I told my neighbors I was going on a trip to visit a cousin in Florida. I called the church and said I wouldn't be at service this Sunday. Nobody suspects anything. Imani walked back to the living room and sank onto the couch. Her whole world had just collapsed. Her husband was cheating on her with her sister. They were planning to fake her mother's death and steal everything. They thought she was stupid enough to fall for it. And then something shifted inside her. The shock and pain began to crystallize into something else. Something harder. Something determined. She looked at her mother. Nicole thinks you're dead. Brandon doesn't know you're here. They think they're going to get away with this. Patty nodded slowly. That's right. So let them think that. Imani's voice was steady now, cold in a way it had never been before. Let them think they've won. Let them go ahead with their fake funeral, their forged documents, their whole plan. And then we expose them for exactly what they are. A slow smile spread across Patty's face. Baby girl, I was hoping you'd say that. But we need help. We need to do this right, make sure they actually face consequences. Imani thought for a moment. Terrence. You remember Terrence from high school? He's a lawyer now. A good one. If anyone can help us build a case, it's him. Call him first thing in the morning. And until then? Until then we document everything. Every message, every plan, every detail. We let them dig their hole deeper and deeper. Patty squeezed her daughter's hand. And when they think they've gotten away with it, when they're standing there at that fake funeral playing their parts, we show the world exactly who they really are. Imani nodded. The tears had stopped. She felt clear-headed for the first time since the phone had rung. Her life as she knew it was over. Her marriage was over. Her relationship with her sister was over. But she was still standing. Her mother was alive. And they were going to make sure that Nicole and Brandon paid for every lie, every betrayal, every moment they had spent plotting against her. She looked at her phone. 1:23 a.m. Brandon still wasn't home. Good. Let him stay out with Nicole. Let them celebrate what they thought was their victory. Let them think they had fooled everyone. Because when the truth came out, and it would come out, Imani was going to make sure everyone knew exactly what kind of people they were. She smiled then, a small, grim smile that didn't reach her eyes. Nicole thought she had won. Nicole thought she was getting everything. But the game wasn't over. Not by a long shot. It was just beginning. The next morning, Imani called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Her supervisor at County General Hospital, Grace Thompson, immediately picked up on the strain in her voice. What's wrong, Imani? You sound terrible. Family emergency. I need a few days. Take whatever time you need. We'll cover your shifts. Call me if you need anything. Imani hung up and looked at her mother, who was making coffee in the kitchen. The morning light streaming through the window seemed surreal. Everything seemed surreal. Just 12 hours ago she had thought her mother was dead. Just 12 hours ago she had still believed her marriage was solid, that her sister, despite their differences, would never truly hurt her. Now she knew better. Brandon had come home at 2:30 a.m., smelling like expensive perfume that wasn't hers. He had slipped into bed quietly, probably thinking she was asleep. Imani had lain there in the darkness, every muscle tense, pretending to sleep while her husband settled beside her. The man who had promised to love her forever. The man who was planning to steal everything from her. He was still asleep upstairs now, completely unaware that his whole scheme was about to come crashing down. I called Terrence, Patty said, setting a mug of coffee in front of her daughter. He can meet us at his office at 10. Did you tell him what this is about? Just that it's urgent and involves fraud. He said he'll clear his morning. Imani wrapped her hands around the warm mug. I keep thinking I should feel something. Anger, sadness, rage. But I just feel numb. That's shock, baby. The feelings will come later. Right now, your mind is protecting you, letting you function so you can do what needs to be done. How can I go upstairs and look at him? How can I pretend everything is normal? The same way I pretended to be dead when Nicole called last night. You dig deep, you find the strength, and you remember that every moment they think they're getting away with this, they're actually making it worse for themselves. Patty sat down across from her daughter. This isn't just about what they did to us. It's about what they were planning to do. They were willing to commit serious crimes. Forgery, fraud, identity theft. Those aren't small things. Imani nodded. She checked her phone. 7:30 a.m. Terrence's office at 10. That gave them 2.5 hours to prepare. I want to see more of those messages. Everything you found. For the next hour, Patty showed her daughter everything. She had been thorough, taking screenshots of dozens of messages, emails, and documents. Nicole and Brandon had been planning this for at least 8 months, maybe longer. They had researched how to forge documents, which funeral homes would be easiest to manipulate, how long it would take for life insurance to pay out. One email from Nicole to Brandon made Imani's blood boil. "I still can't believe Imani married you. She always thought she was so smart, so perfect. Can't wait to see her face when she realizes she has nothing. No husband, no money, no house. While we're living it up on a beach somewhere." Brandon's response: "She suspects nothing. Completely clueless. Sometimes I wonder how she manages to function as a nurse when she can't even see what's happening in her own marriage." Another message from Nicole: "Do you think she'll cry at the funeral? I almost want her to make a scene. It would make us look even more sympathetic." Brandon: "She'll cry. She's always been emotional. Let her grieve. Let her fall apart. It just makes everything easier for us." Imani read message after message, each one another cut, another betrayal. They had laughed about her, mocked her, made plans around her like she was just an obstacle to be removed. But it wasn't just the cruelty that stood out. It was the planning. The detailed, methodical planning. They had opened a joint bank account in the Bahamas. They had booked flights leaving on Saturday, the day after the fake funeral. They had researched how to sell Patty's house quickly, how to access Imani's accounts. And then Imani found something that made her hands shake. "Mom, look at this." It was an email from Brandon to Nicole, dated 2 weeks ago. "Got the paperwork done today. Added you as a beneficiary on Imani's life insurance through her work. $250,000 if something happens to her. Plus the house deed has both our names now since we refinanced last year. Once we're done with this phase, we should start thinking about the long term. Accidents happen all the time." Patty's face went pale. "Oh my God. They weren't just planning to steal from me. They were planning to..." Imani couldn't finish the sentence. "We need to show this to Terrence right away. This is more serious than fraud. This is conspiracy." Imani heard movement upstairs. Brandon was awake. She quickly closed her mother's phone and slipped it into her pocket. "Go to the guest room," she whispered. "Stay quiet." Patty disappeared down the hall just as Brandon's footsteps sounded on the stairs. Imani forced her face into a neutral expression, taking a deep breath to steady herself. Brandon walked into the kitchen, wearing the gray pajama pants she had bought him for Christmas. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes. Good, Imani thought. Let him be tired. Let him be stressed. He should be. "You're not at work?" he asked, pouring himself coffee. "Called in sick. Didn't sleep well. Everything okay?" The absolute irony of that question nearly made her laugh. Instead, she shook her head. "My sister called last night. Late." Brandon froze for just a moment, his hand pausing on the coffee pot. Then he continued pouring, his movements casual. "Yeah. What did she want?" "She said my mom died. Heart attack." Brandon turned around and Imani watched his face carefully. He arranged his features into an expression of shock and concern, but it was too practiced, too perfect. She had seen his real reactions to bad news before. This wasn't one of them. "Oh my God, Imani. I'm so sorry." He crossed to her, putting his arms around her. His embrace felt like being held by a stranger. "When did this happen?" Nicole said Tuesday night. "The funeral is Friday. This is terrible. I know how close you were to your mom." He pulled back, looking into her eyes. Was that guilt she saw there just for a second? Or was he really that good an actor? "What can I do? Do you need me to come to the funeral with you? Would you?" The words tasted bitter in her mouth. "Of course. You shouldn't have to go through this alone." He squeezed her shoulders. "I'll take Friday off. We'll get through this together." Liar. The words screamed in her mind, but she forced a weak smile. "Thank you." Did Nicole say anything else? Here it was. The moment to test him, to see if he would confess, if there was any shred of decency left in him. She said Mom changed her will. Left everything to her. "I get nothing." Brandon's expression didn't change. "That seems strange. Your mom always talked about treating you both fairly." "I know. I don't understand it." Imani watched him carefully. "I'm thinking about contesting it. Getting a lawyer involved." Just a flicker. A tightening around his eyes, a tension in his jaw. There and gone in a second. "Maybe wait until after the funeral? You don't want to cause family drama while you're grieving." "I guess you're right. I need to get to the office. Big presentation today." He kissed her forehead, and it took everything in Imani not to pull away. "I'll probably be late again tonight." but I'll make sure I'm home at a reasonable hour. We should spend time together. You shouldn't be alone. Okay. She watched him head back upstairs to shower and change. 20 minutes later, he left for work, kissing her goodbye, telling her to call him if she needed anything. Playing the part of the caring husband so perfectly. The moment his car pulled out of the driveway, Patty emerged from the guest room. You did good, baby. Real good. I wanted to scream at him. Wanted to show him the messages, throw everything in his face. I know. But that wouldn't help us. We need to be smart about this. Patty checked her watch. We should leave for Terrence's office soon. They took Imani's car, parking in the garage of the downtown office building where Terrence worked. He had done well for himself. The law firm took up 3 floors, all glass and polished wood with views of the city. Terrence met them in the lobby personally. He had been tall and gangly in high school, all elbows and knees. Now he was polished and professional in a sharp blue suit, though his eyes still held the same warmth Imani remembered. Imani. It's been too long. He hugged her, then turned to Patty. And it's good to see you too. Though I was very confused by your call, considering Imani's sister called me yesterday to tell me you had died. Nicole called you? Imani asked. She did. Wanted to know if I handled estate law. I told her I did corporate law mostly, but I could refer her to someone. She said she'd think about it. Terrence led them to his private office, closing the door behind them. So I'm assuming you're not actually dead and there's a story here. For the next hour they laid out everything. Patty showed him the messages, the forged documents, the plans. Imani explained about Brandon's late addition to her life insurance and the ominous message about accidents. Terrence's expression grew darker as the story unfolded. He took notes, asked questions, requested copies of everything they had found. When they finished, he sat back in his chair, shaking his head. This is bad. Really bad. We're talking about multiple felonies. Fraud, forgery, conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft. And that message about the life insurance? That could potentially be conspiracy to commit murder if a prosecutor wanted to push it. What do we do? Imani asked. First, we document everything. I'm going to need copies of all these messages. I want you to continue gathering evidence if possible, but be careful. Don't do anything that could be seen as illegal on your end. Terrence pulled up a legal pad and started making a list. Second, we need to contact the authorities. Not local police. This crosses state lines with the bank account in the Bahamas, so we're looking at federal crimes. I have a contact at the FBI who handles fraud cases. The FBI? Imani felt a chill. Yes. This is serious enough to warrant federal investigation. We're talking about fraud, possible conspiracy to commit murder, interstate financial crimes. They'll want to know about this. Terrence looked at Patty. Are you willing to go on record? To testify about what you found? Absolutely. Good. Then here's what we're going to do. We let them continue with their plan. Let them have their fake funeral on Friday. Let them think everything is going according to their scheme. Meanwhile, I'm going to contact the FBI today. They'll want to monitor this situation, maybe even have agents at the funeral observing. Won't that be dangerous? Imani asked. If they realize something is wrong? The agents will be discreet. And honestly, Nicole and Brandon are so confident right now, they're not going to be looking for trouble. They think they've won. Terrence leaned forward. But here's what's critical. You need to act normal. Both of you. Patty, you need to stay hidden. Imani, you need to keep pretending with Brandon. I know it's going to be hard, but it's essential. The more evidence they generate, the stronger our case becomes. I can do it, Imani said quietly. I can pretend. What about divorce proceedings? Patty asked. Can we start those now? We can prepare the paperwork, but I'd recommend waiting until after Friday to file. We want Brandon to feel secure, to think everything is going according to plan. Then, after the fake funeral, when he and Nicole think they're home free, that's when we strike. Federal agents arrest them, and Imani files for divorce the same day with all of this as evidence. Terrence made more notes. We can also get a restraining order against Brandon at that time, freeze all joint accounts, secure the house. What about Nicole? Imani asked. She's planning to leave the country Saturday morning. She won't make it to the airport. Trust me. Terrence smiled grimly. By Saturday morning, both of them will be in custody. They spent another hour going over details, planning the next few days. Terrence made copies of everything, organized the evidence, and prepared his contact with the FBI. He gave Imani his personal cell number and told her to call any time, day or night. As they left the office, Imani felt something she hadn't felt since Nicole's phone call. Oh. They had a plan. They had evidence. They had help from someone who knew how to make this right. You okay? Patty asked as they drove home. I will be. Once this is all over, once they're both facing what they've done, I will be. Imani glanced at her mother. Thank you for finding this out. Thank you for not just confronting them yourself. You're my daughter. My first priority is protecting you. And I wanted you to have all the information, all the power to decide how to handle this. Back at home, Imani had to face the hardest part. Living normally for the next 3 days. Pretending she didn't know anything. Pretending her heart wasn't broken, her trust wasn't shattered, her life wasn't falling apart. Brandon came home at 9 p.m. He brought Chinese food, her favorite from the restaurant they had gone to on their first date. Another perfect touch from a perfect actor. Thought you might not feel like cooking, he said, setting the bags on the kitchen counter. How are you holding up? Still in shock, I think. Have you talked to Nicole again? No. I don't really want to. I'm still processing everything. He nodded sympathetically. That's understandable. You two have always had a complicated relationship. They ate dinner together. Brandon told her about his presentation at work, about the clients he was meeting with, about office politics. All normal conversation. All perfectly pleasant. As if he wasn't planning to destroy her life. After dinner, as Brandon loaded the dishwasher, Imani's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Special Agent Rebecca Mills with the FBI. Terrence contacted me. I'll be in touch tomorrow to discuss the case. Thank you for coming forward. Imani deleted the message immediately and looked up to find Brandon watching her. Everything okay? He asked. Just Grace from work, checking on me. He smiled. That's nice of her. That night, lying in bed beside her husband, Imani stared at the ceiling. 3 more days. 3 more days of this act. 3 more days of pretending she didn't know the truth. She could do this. She had to do this. For herself. For her mother. For justice. 3 more days and then the whole charade would end. And when it did, Brandon and Nicole would finally understand what it meant to lose everything. Thursday morning came too quickly and too slowly. Imani had barely slept, hyper-aware of Brandon beside her, of the deception that filled the space between them like something tangible and dark. When her alarm went off at 6 a.m., he was already awake, scrolling through his phone. I was thinking, Brandon said, not looking up from his screen. Maybe I should go with you to visit the funeral home today. You shouldn't have to face Nicole alone. Imani's stomach clenched. The last thing she needed was Brandon inserting himself into this more than he already had. That's sweet, but I can handle it. Besides, don't you have work? I can take the day off. This is more important. Really, I'm fine. Grace is going to come with me. The lie came easily now, sliding off her tongue without hesitation. I asked her yesterday. Brandon finally looked at her, and for a moment, Imani thought she saw something in his eyes. Suspicion? Concern? But then he smiled and nodded. Okay, if you're sure. Just call me if you need me. After he left for work, Patty emerged from the guest room where she had been hiding. She looked tired, the stress of the past few days showing in the lines around her eyes. Special Agent Mills is coming by at 10, Imani said. Terrence set it up. She wants to see the house, see where Brandon's been working, go through his office if we can. Good. The more evidence, the better. Patty poured herself coffee, her hands not quite steady. I never thought I'd be hiding in my own daughter's house, plotting against my other daughter. Nicole made her choice. She chose to do this. I know. Doesn't make it easier. Patty sat down at the kitchen table. I keep thinking about when you two were little. How you used to play together, share everything. She was so protective of you when you started kindergarten. Do you remember? She walked you to your classroom every day for the first week, made sure the other kids were nice to you. I remember. Imani's throat tightened. What happened to her? Life. Jealousy. Bad choices compounding on each other. Patty shook her head. But that doesn't excuse what she's doing now. That child I remember, that sweet big sister, she's still in there somewhere. But she's buried under years of resentment and greed. Special Agent Rebecca Mills arrived precisely at 10 a.m. She was a tall woman with sharp eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore a dark pantsuit and carried a leather briefcase. Everything about her radiated competence and authority. Mrs. Carter, she said, shaking Imani's hand firmly. And Mrs. Patricia Carter, I presume? She nodded at Patty. It's good to see you alive and well. Your daughter did a very convincing job pretending to be dead when she called me yesterday. My other daughter, Nicole, Patty corrected. She's the one orchestrating this. Yes. I've reviewed the evidence Terrence provided. It's quite extensive. But I'd like to see Brandon's office, his computer if possible, any documents he might have at home. They led Agent Mills upstairs to Brandon's home office, a room Imani rarely entered. He had always been protective of his space, saying he needed privacy for work. Now she understood why. The office was neat and organized with a large desk, a filing cabinet, and a bookshelf lined with finance books. Agent Mills pulled on latex gloves before touching anything, moving through the space with practiced efficiency. "Does he keep his computer locked?" she asked. "I don't know. I've never tried to access it." Agent Mills pressed the power button on the laptop sitting on the desk. It booted up and sure enough it required a password. "That's fine. We can get into it later with a warrant. What about these files?" She gestured to the filing cabinet. "I've never looked through them." "May I?" Imani nodded. This was her house, her filing cabinet. She had every right to look through it. So why did she feel like she was violating Brandon's privacy? Because a voice in her head answered, "You still love him. Despite everything, despite all the evidence, part of you still loves the man you married, not the stranger he turned out to be." Agent Mills pulled open the top drawer. Inside were neat folders labeled with various categories: insurance, mortgage, taxes, car. But there in the back was a folder simply labeled personal. Agent Mills pulled it out and opened it on the desk. Inside were documents that made Imani's breath catch. A copy of Patty's forged death certificate, printed but not yet officially filed. A draft of a false will with Patty's signature. Bank statements for an account in the Bahamas showing regular deposits over the past 6 months. "He's been siphoning money from our joint account," Imani said, looking at the transaction records. $500 here, $1,000 there. Not enough for me to notice right away, but it adds up. How much total? Imani did quick math in her head. Maybe $15,000 over 6 months. And you didn't notice? I trusted him. He always handled the finances, said it was easier if one person managed everything. Imani felt foolish saying it out loud. Don't blame yourself. Financial abuse is common in these situations. The abuser isolates the victim from financial knowledge, makes them dependent. Agent Mills continued photographing documents with her phone. This is good. Very good. Combined with the messages your mother found and the forged documents, we have a solid case for fraud and conspiracy. She pulled out more papers. Printed emails between Brandon and Nicole detailing their plans. A timeline they had created, marking out each step of their scheme. Flight confirmation for their trip to the Bahamas on Saturday. They're thorough, Agent Mills noted. Too thorough. They documented everything. That's going to make prosecution much easier. At the bottom of the folder was something that made Imani's heart stop. A handwritten note in Brandon's writing: Imani Life Insurance. Work policy $250K. Add Nicole as beneficiary. Then personal policy $500K. Change beneficiary to Nicole. Wait 6 months, then accident. Stairs? Car. Make it look natural. Oh God, Imani whispered. Agent Mills photographed the note carefully, her expression grim. When did he add Nicole to your work life insurance? 2 weeks ago. I remember him asking me to sign some papers, said it was routine update paperwork from HR. I didn't read it carefully. I just signed. And your personal policy? Did he change that too? Imani pulled out her phone with shaking hands, logging into her insurance company's website. She navigated to her policy and pulled up the beneficiary information. Sure enough, updated 1 week ago, Nicole was now the sole beneficiary of her $500K life insurance policy. He forged my signature. He must have. Imani felt dizzy. I never signed anything changing that. We'll need to notify the insurance company immediately. They'll want to investigate the fraud. Agent Mills closed the folder. But Imani, I need you to understand something. This note? This isn't just fraud anymore. This is conspiracy to commit murder. Your husband was actively planning to kill you. The words hung in the air. Conspiracy to commit murder. Brandon hadn't just been planning to steal from her. He had been planning to end her life. I need to sit down, Imani managed, stumbling to the chair by the window. Patty was beside her immediately, wrapping her arms around her daughter. It's okay, baby. You're safe. We found out in time. But if you hadn't found those messages, if you hadn't been suspicious, if you had actually been in Florida like you told your neighbors? Imani couldn't finish the thought. But I did find them. And you are safe. And he's never going to get the chance to hurt you. Patty looked at Agent Mills. What happens now? I'm going to take all of this evidence back to my office. We'll get warrants for Brandon's computer, his phone, his office at work. We'll coordinate with local police for the arrest to happen Friday evening, after the fake funeral. That gives them one more day to incriminate themselves further. Agent Mills packed up her briefcase. In the meantime, Imani, I need you to continue acting normal. Don't let Brandon know anything is wrong. How am I supposed to do that? How am I supposed to sleep next to him tonight, knowing he was planning to kill me? I know it's hard, but it's crucial. We need him to feel safe, to think his plan is working perfectly. Can you do that? For 2 more days. Imani thought about the note. About Brandon's handwriting, planning her death like it was just another item on his to-do list. The man she had loved, had trusted, had built a life with, had been preparing to kill her. I can do it, she said quietly. For 2 more days I can pretend. Good. I'm going to have an agent parked outside watching the house. If anything happens, if you feel unsafe at all, you call this number immediately. Agent Mills handed her a card. My direct line. 24 hours. After the agent left, Imani and Patty sat in silence for a long time. Do you want to stay somewhere else tonight? Patty finally asked. We could go to a hotel. Tell Brandon you needed space. No. That would make him suspicious. I stay here, I act normal, I see this through. Imani stood up, surprised to find her legs steady. The shock was fading, replaced by something harder. Determination. He's not going to win. He's not going to get my money, my house, my life. And he's definitely not going to get away with planning to murder me. That afternoon, Imani's phone rang. Nicole. She almost didn't answer, but Agent Mills had said to keep everything normal. Hello. It's me. Nicole's voice was cold. I'm at Riverside Chapel making final arrangements for tomorrow. They need payment for the casket, the flowers, everything. Since you're not contributing anything, I'm putting it all on my credit card. The absolute nerve. Nicole was planning a fake funeral for their mother, who was standing right next to Imani, very much alive and demanding payment. How much? Imani asked, keeping her voice neutral. $12,000. For everything. That seems expensive for a funeral. Well, that's what it costs. I'm not going to give Mom a cheap funeral just because you don't think it's worth it. Nicole's tone was sharp, accusatory. The viewing is tomorrow at 1. Funeral at 2. Try to look appropriately sad, will you? I don't want people thinking you didn't care about her. I'll be there. Oh, and Brandon called me. Said he's coming with you. That's good. You'll need the support. There was something in Nicole's voice. Something smug and knowing that made Imani's skin crawl. Thanks for letting me know. After the call, Imani looked at her mother. She's charging $12,000 for a funeral for someone who isn't dead. Let her. She's just adding more charges to her list of crimes. Fraud, theft by deception, probably some kind of insurance fraud too when she tries to collect on my life insurance. This is insane. This whole thing is insane. I know, baby. But tomorrow it all ends. Brandon came home early that evening, surprising Imani. He brought flowers, pink roses, her favorite. I know tomorrow is going to be hard, he said, handing them to her. I wanted you to know I'm here for you. Imani took the flowers, their sweet scent making her nauseous. These roses, this gesture, it was all part of his act. How many times had he done this? How many thoughtful gifts, sweet moments, loving words had all been lies? Thank you, she managed. They ordered pizza for dinner. Brandon was attentive, asking how she was feeling, if she needed anything. He held her hand across the table. He told her stories about work, made her laugh despite everything. He was so good at this. So convincing. That night, as they got ready for bed, Brandon pulled her close. I love you, Imani. I know we don't say it enough anymore, but I do. I love you. The words were knives. Because part of her, a foolish, hopeful part, wanted to believe them. Wanted this to all be some terrible mistake, some misunderstanding that could be cleared up. But she had seen the note in his handwriting. Had seen the plans, the bank accounts, the messages. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate, calculated betrayal. I love you too, she lied, and hated herself for how easily the words came. She lay awake long after Brandon fell asleep beside her, staring at the ceiling, counting down the hours. Tomorrow afternoon, at the fake funeral, this would all come to an end. Tomorrow, Nicole and Brandon would finally face consequences for what they had done. Tomorrow, Imani's real life could finally begin. She just had to make it through one more night. Friday morning arrived cold and gray, appropriate weather for a funeral, even a fake one. Imani stood in front of her closet, trying to decide what to wear to her mother's funeral when her mother was downstairs eating breakfast. The black dress, Patty called up the stairs as if reading her mind. The one with the blue flowers. I always liked that one. Imani pulled out the dress. It was simple, respectful, appropriate for mourning. She held it against herself, looking in the mirror. The woman staring back at her looked tired, hollowed out. That would sell the grief Nicole was expecting to see. Brandon was already dressed in his dark blue suit, looking every inch the supportive husband. He had been quiet this morning, checking his phone frequently. Probably coordinating with Nicole, Imani thought. Making sure all their pieces were in place. You ready? He asked when she came downstairs. As ready as I'll ever be to bury my mother. The words felt strange in her mouth, bitter and wrong. But Brandon just nodded sympathetically and held out her coat. The drive to Riverside Chapel took 20 minutes. Imani watched the familiar streets pass by, trying to prepare herself for what was coming. Agent Mills had briefed her last night. There would be FBI agents at the funeral, posing as mourners. They would document everything, record every interaction. After the funeral, after Nicole and Brandon thought they had pulled it off, that's when the arrest would happen. You've been quiet, Brandon said, breaking the silence. I'm going to a funeral. I know. I just wanted to make sure you're okay. I'm not okay, Brandon. My mother is dead. The lies were getting easier. Too easy. Right. Of course. Stupid question. He reached over and squeezed her hand. His palm was sweating. Was he nervous? Did some part of him feel guilty about what he was doing? Riverside Chapel was a stately old building with white columns and a long driveway lined with bare trees. Several cars were already parked out front. Imani recognized some of them. Her mother's friends from church. Neighbors. People Nicole must have called. How many people were here to mourn a woman who wasn't dead? How many had sent flowers, made casseroles, offered prayers for a lie? Inside, the chapel was decorated with elaborate flower arrangements. White lilies, pink roses, purple orchids. Nicole hadn't been exaggerating about the expense. At the front of the room sat a closed casket, gleaming wood and brass handles. Imani stopped walking. There was a casket. An actual casket. Empty, presumably, but still. Nicole had gone that far. It's okay, Brandon murmured, his hand on her back. Take your time. Nicole appeared from a side room, wearing a black dress with a strand of pearls. She looked elegant, composed, every inch the grieving daughter. When she saw Imani, she dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, though Imani noticed they were perfectly dry. You came, Nicole said, her voice carrying across the room so others could hear. I wasn't sure you would. Of course I came. Nicole approached, and for a moment, Imani thought her sister was actually going to try to hug her. But Nicole just squeezed her arm briefly, a gesture that probably looked comforting to observers but felt cold and clinical to Imani. The viewing starts in 15 minutes. I need to speak with the funeral director about some last-minute details. Nicole glanced at Brandon and something passed between them. A look. Brief but unmistakable. Brandon, could you help me? There's a problem with the guest book. Of course. Brandon followed Nicole to the back of the chapel, leaving Imani standing alone in front of the empty casket. An older woman approached, one of Patty's friends from church. Imani dear. I'm so sorry for your loss. Your mother was a wonderful woman. Thank you, Mrs. Harrison. If there's anything you need, anything at all, you just let me know. Mrs. Harrison patted her hand. We're all here for you. Imani nodded, not trusting herself to speak. These people were genuinely mourning. They had loved her mother. And they were here because of Nicole's lies. More people arrived. The chapel filled with quiet conversations, whispered condolences, the rustle of programs being picked up from the table by the door. Imani accepted hugs, thanked people for coming, played her part in this elaborate theater. She spotted the FBI agents easily, though she doubted anyone else would. A man in a dark suit near the back, holding a program but watching everything. A woman by the entrance, dressed like someone's aunt, with a large purse that probably held recording equipment. Brandon and Nicole returned. Brandon immediately came to Imani's side, slipping his arm around her waist. Nicole stood at the front, greeting people, accepting condolences, her performance flawless. At 1 p.m. exactly, a minister stepped to the podium. Imani didn't recognize him. Probably someone Nicole had hired, someone who had never met Patty Carter. We are gathered here today, he began, to celebrate the life and mourn the passing of Patricia Ann Carter, devoted mother, faithful friend, and beloved member of her community. The service was a strange, surreal experience. The minister spoke about Patty in generic terms, talking about her kindness and strength without any specific stories or details. It was like listening to a template funeral, fill-in-the-blank mourning. Nicole stood at one point to give a eulogy. She walked to the podium, tissues in hand, and faced the gathered mourners. "My mother," she began, her voice breaking convincingly, "was the most important person in my life. She taught me everything I know about strength, about dignity, about family." Imani had to bite her tongue to keep from standing up and calling out the lie. Nicole didn't care about family. She had betrayed everything family meant. "In her final days," Nicole continued, "Mom told me something I'll never forget. She said, 'Nicole, make sure you take care of things. Make sure everything is handled properly. I'm counting on you.'" The manipulation was breathtaking. Nicole was using this fake funeral to establish her story, to explain why she was the one handling everything, why the will had supposedly been changed. "And I promised her I would. That I would make sure her wishes were respected, that her memory was honored." Nicole wiped her eyes. "I only wish my sister and I were closer. Mom would have wanted us to comfort each other. But I suppose grief affects us all differently." There it was. The implication that Imani was cold, distant, not properly mourning. Nicole was already building her defense, explaining away any conflict that might arise when Imani contested the will. Brandon squeezed Imani's hand, playing the concerned husband perfectly. She wanted to shake him off, to tell everyone in this room what he really was. But she sat still, face neutral, waiting. The service continued. A prayer. A hymn. More generic platitudes about death and loss and eternal peace. Finally it was over. People began to file out, stopping to offer final condolences to Nicole, who stood by the casket like a soldier on duty. Imani approached her sister, aware of all the eyes watching. This was it. The moment when everything could fall apart if she didn't play it right. "It was a nice service," Imani said quietly. "Thank you for coming." Nicole's eyes were hard despite her sad expression. "I know this is difficult for you." "It is. But I needed to be here. To say goodbye." "Did you want to?" Nicole gestured to the casket. "See her one last time?" Imani's stomach turned. The casket was empty. They both knew it was empty. And yet Nicole was offering, probably hoping Imani would ask to open it, would make a scene when she saw it was sealed. "No. I'd rather remember her as she was." Nicole nodded. Probably for the best. She didn't look like herself at the end. The lies just kept coming, smooth and practiced. How long had Nicole been planning this? How many times had she rehearsed these exact words? "When is the burial?" Imani asked. "Private. Just me. I think it's better that way." Of course. Because there was no body to bury. Nicole would probably claim she had Patty cremated, make up some story about scattering the ashes somewhere meaningful. People were leaving now, the chapel slowly emptying. Brandon was talking to someone near the door. The FBI agents were maintaining their positions, watching everything. And then Imani's phone buzzed in her purse. A text from Agent Mills, "Step outside. Now." Imani excused herself and walked out into the cold afternoon air. Agent Mills was waiting by the side of the building, out of sight from the main entrance. "We have a problem," the agent said quietly. "Brandon and Nicole are planning to leave tonight." "Not tomorrow. Tonight. We just intercepted messages between them. They're meeting at 8 p.m. at a storage facility on Porter Street to get the forged documents and cash they've been hiding. Then they're catching a midnight flight out of the country. They moved up their timeline." "Yes. Which means we need to move too. We're going to make the arrests tonight at the storage facility. We'll catch them literally with the evidence in hand." Agent Mills looked at Imani intently. "Can you keep Brandon with you until 7 p.m.? Give us time to set up?" "I can try." "Don't try. Do it. We need both of them together with the evidence. Otherwise they can each claim the other acted alone. We need to catch them in the act." Imani nodded and went back inside. The chapel was almost empty now, just a few stragglers offering final condolences. Nicole was talking to the funeral director, probably arranging payment with the credit card she planned to steal from. Brandon was waiting by the door. "Ready to go?" "Actually, I was thinking we could stop somewhere. Get some food. I don't want to go home just yet." "Are you sure? I thought you'd want to rest." "I need to be around people right now. Around life. Please?" She put her hand on his arm, looked up at him with pleading eyes. He hesitated, checking his watch. He must be planning to meet Nicole later. But he couldn't refuse without seeming suspicious. "Okay. Whatever you need." They said goodbye to Nicole, who hugged Imani briefly. "Thank you for being here," she whispered. I know we've had our differences, but Mom would have wanted us together today. The performance continued. Even now, even at the fake funeral, Nicole couldn't just be honest. Imani and Brandon left the chapel. She suggested a restaurant across town, somewhere that would take a while to get to, where they could linger over dinner. Brandon agreed, though she could see him getting more tense as the afternoon wore on. They ordered food. Made conversation. Talked about the service, about the people who had come, about funeral logistics. All normal. All surface level. Neither of them saying what they were really thinking. Brandon checked his phone constantly. At 6:30 he stood abruptly. "I'm sorry, I need to use the restroom." Imani watched him walk away, pull out his phone in the hallway by the bathrooms. He was texting someone. Nicole probably. Trying to figure out how to get away from Imani without raising suspicion. When he came back, his face was set in careful lines. "I just got a call from work. Emergency situation. I need to go into the office for an hour, maybe two. Tonight? It's Friday night. And after the funeral? I know. I'm sorry. But this client is threatening to pull their account if we don't address their concerns immediately. My boss specifically asked for me." He squeezed her hand. "I'll be back as soon as I can. You should go home, rest. It's been a long day." "Okay." She let disappointment show on her face. "If you have to." "I do. But I'll be home by 10 at the latest. We can watch a movie, decompress." He kissed her cheek. "I'm sorry." They paid the bill and left. Brandon drove her home, apologizing again about work. Imani watched him drive away, then immediately called Agent Mills. "He's on his way. Probably meeting Nicole at the storage facility. We're ready. We have units positioned. This ends tonight, Imani. What do I do?" "Stay home. Stay safe. I'll call you when it's done." Imani went inside where Patty was waiting anxiously. "Well? They're moving tonight. The FBI is going to arrest them at the storage facility when they meet to get their evidence. It's really happening. It's really happening." They sat together on the couch, waiting. The minutes ticked by slowly. 7 p.m. 7:30. 8 p.m. Finally, at 8:47 p.m., Imani's phone rang. "Agent Mills. We have them," the agent said. "Both of them. We caught them loading cash and forged documents into Nicole's car. They're in custody." Imani closed her eyes, feeling a wave of relief so strong it made her dizzy. "It's over. It's over. You did great, Imani. Really great. We'll need you to come to the field office tomorrow to give a formal statement, but for tonight you're safe. He's not coming home." After the call, Imani sat in silence. It should feel like victory. Like justice. But mostly she just felt empty. Tired. Done. "How do you feel?" Patty asked gently. "I don't know. Everything all at once. Relieved. Sad. Angry. Numb. That's normal, baby. You've been through something traumatic." "I know. And I know it's going to take time to process all of this. But right now, tonight, I just want to sleep. In my own bed. In my own house. Without worrying about who's lying next to me." That night, for the first time in a week, Imani slept deeply. No nightmares. No anxiety. Just dark, dreamless sleep. Because it was finally over. And tomorrow she could start to rebuild her life. Saturday morning, Imani woke to sunshine streaming through her bedroom window and the strange, disorienting realization that Brandon was not in bed beside her. For just a moment, before full consciousness returned, she reached across the mattress expecting to find him there. Then memory crashed back, the fake funeral, the arrests, everything. He was in jail. Her husband was in jail. And her sister was too. Imani sat up, running her hands through her hair. Her phone showed 3 missed calls, all from numbers she didn't recognize. Probably reporters, she thought. Agent Mills had warned her that the story would break today. Investment banker and sister-in-law arrested in elaborate fraud scheme would make excellent headlines. Downstairs, Patty was already awake, coffee brewing, the television on low. The morning news was indeed covering the story, though they had few details yet. A photograph of Brandon flashed on the screen, a professional headshot from his company website. Then a photo of Nicole that looked like it had been pulled from social media. "They called them the inheritance killers," Patty said, shaking her head. "The media does love a dramatic name. They weren't killers. Not yet. But they could have been," Imani thought. If this had gone on longer. If she hadn't found out in time. Agent Mills had arranged for Imani to give her statement at 10 a.m. Terrence met them at the FBI field office, looking professional in a gray suit despite it being Saturday. "How are you holding up?" he asked as they waited in the lobby. "I'm not sure yet. Ask me in a few weeks. Fair enough. I've already filed the divorce paperwork this morning. Since Brandon is in custody, we're requesting an emergency hearing to freeze all joint assets. The judge should grant it, especially given the circumstances. How long will the divorce take? In Texas, there's a mandatory 60-day waiting period before a divorce can be finalized. But given Brandon's arrest and the nature of his crimes, we can probably expedite things. Maybe 3 to 4 months total. And the criminal case against them? That's going to take much longer. Could be a year or more before it goes to trial, assuming they don't take a plea deal. Terrence flipped through his notes. But the evidence is overwhelming. The forged documents, the messages planning your mother's fake death, the bank accounts in the Bahamas, that note about your life insurance. Any decent prosecutor will get convictions. Agent Mills came out to greet them, leading them back to a conference room. For the next 3 hours, Imani gave her formal statement. She went through everything, starting with Nicole's phone call about Patty's supposed death and ending with the arrest the night before. Agent Mills recorded everything, asked clarifying questions, had Imani sign document after document. What happens now? Imani asked when they finally finished. Brandon and Nicole will be arraigned on Monday. They'll be formally charged and bail will be set. Given the flight risk, we're recommending they be held without bail, but that's ultimately up to the judge. What are they being charged with? Multiple counts. Wire fraud, identity theft, forgery, conspiracy to commit fraud. We're also charging them with conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, and we're considering attempted murder charges based on that note and the changes to your life insurance. Agent Mills closed her folder. Conservatively, they're each looking at 15 to 20 years in federal prison. The number hung in the air. 15 to 20 years. Brandon would be in his 50s when he got out. Nicole would be in her 50s. Their lives essentially over. Do they know about Mom? Imani asked. That she's alive? Yes. They found out last night when we arrested them. Nicole actually fainted when your mother walked into the interrogation room. Agent Mills allowed herself a small smile. It was quite dramatic. Brandon just sat there staring like he'd seen a ghost. After the FBI meeting, Terrence took Imani and Patty to his office. They had legal matters to address beyond the criminal case. I'm recommending you get a restraining order against both Brandon and Nicole, Terrence said. Even though they're in custody now, they'll eventually make bail or be released pending trial. You need legal protection. What does a restraining order actually do? It legally prohibits them from contacting you or coming within a certain distance of your home, workplace, or anywhere you regularly frequent. If they violate it, they go back to jail. Terrence pulled up forms on his computer. We can file this on Monday morning. What about the house? It's in both our names. That's trickier. Usually in a divorce, marital property gets divided equitably. But given Brandon's crimes, we can argue he forfeited his claim to the house through his illegal activities. The fact that he was planning to steal it anyway helps our case. I'm confident we can get the house awarded solely to you. And money? The accounts? All joint accounts are already frozen pending the investigation. Any money Brandon moved to the Bahamas account is being seized by federal authorities. We'll need to document all your separate accounts, anything that was yours before the marriage or that you kept in your name only. Imani thought about their finances. When they got married, she had kept her savings account separate, though she rarely used it, letting Brandon handle their money. Thank God for that now. I have about $30,000 in my personal savings. Everything else was joint. That's good. That's yours, untouchable. Terrence made notes. We'll argue that you're entitled to half of the joint assets, plus compensation for the money he stole and moved to the Bahamas. Also, since he was using marital funds to support his affair with your sister, we can claim dissipation of assets. What does that mean? It means he wasted marital money on the affair. Courts take a dim view of that. We can ask for compensation from his share of assets. They spent the rest of the afternoon going through financial documents, creating a comprehensive picture of Imani and Brandon's shared life. Every bank account, every credit card, the mortgage, car payments, investments. It was strange seeing 7 years of marriage reduced to numbers on a spreadsheet. What about his pension? His 401k? Imani asked. Those are marital assets too. You're entitled to a portion, typically calculated based on how long you were married versus how long he's been working. Terrence ran some quick calculations. Could be substantial, actually. Probably another 100,000 or so. By the time they finished, it was nearly 5 p.m. Imani felt drained, wrung out like a dishcloth. I know this is a lot, Terrence said gently. but we're building a strong case. You're going to come out of this okay. Not just financially, but okay. I don't feel okay. You won't, not for a while. But you will be. You walk them to the elevator. Take the weekend. Rest. Don't think about any of this. On Monday we'll file the restraining orders and start the real work. But for now, just breathe. Sunday was strange. Imani's phone rang constantly with calls from people who had seen the news. Her boss at the hospital called, offering support and time off. Grace stopped by with food and hugs. Patty's friends from church descended with casseroles and sympathy, shocked that their prayers for Patty's soul had been unnecessary. I can't believe Nicole would do such a thing, Mrs. Harrison said, shaking her head. I've known that girl since she was in diapers. People change, Patty said quietly. Or maybe they were always who they are and we just didn't want to see it. The hardest call came from Brandon's mother. She was crying, barely coherent. Imani, I don't understand. The police called me. They said Brandon was arrested. They said terrible things about him and Nicole. Tell me it's not true. I'm sorry, but it is true. But Brandon loves you. He would never hurt you. He was planning to kill me. The words felt unreal even as Imani said them. He added my sister to my life insurance and wrote notes about making my death look like an accident. Brandon's mother sobbed on the other end of the line. I don't believe it. I won't believe it. My son is a good man. Your son is a criminal. Imani felt bad for being harsh, but she couldn't muster sympathy right now. I'm sorry you're going through this. But I can't help you. I have to focus on myself right now. She hung up, feeling guilty and relieved at the same time. Monday morning arrived too quickly. Imani dressed carefully in a maroon skirt and white blouse, professional but not trying too hard. She met Terrence at the courthouse at 8 a.m. The arraignment is at 9, he explained as they walked through security. You don't have to be here for it, but I thought you might want to be. I do. I need to see them face what they've done. The courtroom was smaller than she expected, plain and functional. Rows of benches, a raised platform for the judge, an American flag in the corner. A few reporters sat in the back, notebooks ready. At exactly 9 a.m., Brandon and Nicole were brought in wearing orange jumpsuits, their hands cuffed in front of them. Brandon's hair was messy, his face unshaven. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. Nicole's eyes were red and swollen, her usual polished appearance completely gone. They saw Imani sitting in the front row. Brandon's face crumpled, and he mouthed something that might have been, I'm sorry. Nicole just stared, her expression unreadable. The judge, the Honorable Rebecca Foster, was a stern-looking black woman in her 60s. She read the charges in a flat, clinical tone. Brandon Carter, you are charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud, identity theft, forgery, and conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. How do you plead? Brandon's lawyer, a public defender who looked barely out of law school, stood. Not guilty, Your Honor. Nicole Carter, you are charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud, identity theft, forgery, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, and elder abuse. How do you plead? Nicole's lawyer entered the same plea. Not guilty. The prosecutor, a woman named Janet Rodriguez, stood to address bail. Your Honor, both defendants are extreme flight risks. They were arrested while attempting to flee the country with forged documents and over $50,000 in cash. They have demonstrated a willingness to engage in elaborate criminal schemes. We request they be held without bail. Brandon's lawyer protested. Your Honor, my client has strong ties to the community, a stable job history, no prior criminal record. Bail should be set. A stable job he used as a cover to commit crimes, Rodriguez countered. And those community ties meant nothing when he was planning to abandon them all and flee to the Bahamas. Judge Foster looked at the case file, her expression thoughtful. Finally she spoke. Given the nature of the charges, the evidence of flight risk, and the elaborate planning involved in these alleged crimes, bail is denied. Both defendants will remain in custody pending trial. Brandon actually gasped. Nicole started crying. Their lawyers tried to object, but the judge's decision was final. As they were let out, Brandon turned and looked directly at Imani. His eyes were pleading, desperate. She looked back at him, her face calm, and felt nothing but a strange sort of peace. This was real. This was happening. And she had survived. After the arraignment, Terrence filed the restraining orders and the emergency motion to freeze assets. They spent the afternoon meeting with a financial advisor to assess what Imani actually had access to while everything was being sorted out. You're okay for now, the advisor, a kind man named Jerome Hayes, assured her. Your personal savings, your salary from the hospital, that's all yours. The joint accounts will be tied up for a while, but you can pay your mortgage and bills from your own account until things are resolved. How long will that take? Depends on how fast the criminal case moves. Could be months. Could be longer. Jerome reviewed her budget. But you're not in immediate danger of financial hardship. You make good money as a nurse and you live within your means. It was strange to think about. She had been with Brandon for 7 years. Had let him handle their finances, make the big decisions about money. And now she was on her own, responsible for everything. I can do this, she said, more to herself than anyone else. You absolutely can, Jerome agreed. That evening, back at home with Patty, Imani finally allowed herself to feel everything she had been holding back. The anger, the betrayal, the grief for the marriage she thought she had. She cried for an hour, ugly sobbing tears while her mother held her. I know it hurts, Patty said softly. I know you loved him. It's okay to grieve that even after what he did. I feel stupid for missing him. For wishing this wasn't real. That's not stupid. That's human. You didn't do anything wrong, baby. You loved and trusted someone and he betrayed that trust. That's on him, not you. Eventually the tears stopped. Imani washed her face, drank some water and felt something shift inside her. The grief was still there, but underneath it was something stronger. Determination. Resilience. She had survived the shock of discovery. She had survived the fake funeral. She had given her statement to the FBI, filed for divorce, faced Brandon in court. And she was still standing. What do I do now? She asked her mother. Now. Patty smiled. Now you live. You build the life you want, the life you deserve. And you don't look back. Imani nodded. It wouldn't be easy. The divorce would take months. The criminal trial would take longer. She would have to rebuild her finances, her social life, her sense of who she was without Brandon. But she could do it. She would do it. Because Nicole and Brandon had tried to destroy her and they had failed. She was still here. Still breathing. Still fighting. And that was something they could never take away. The weeks following Brandon and Nicole's arraignment blurred together in a strange mixture of legal proceedings and attempts at normalcy. Imani went back to work at the hospital, throwing herself into 12-hour shifts that left her too exhausted to think about what had happened. Her co-workers were supportive but curious, asking questions she didn't always want to answer. The story had made the local news and everyone knew at least the basics. Nurse's husband and sister caught in fraud scheme. The headlines were impossible to escape. How are you doing? Really? Grace asked one afternoon during their break. They sat in the staff lounge, both nursing cups of terrible coffee. I don't know yet. Some days I feel okay. Some days I feel like I'm falling apart. Imani stirred her coffee absently. I keep finding things of his around the house. A book he was reading. His favorite coffee mug. His toothbrush still in the bathroom. Little reminders that he existed, that our life together was real. Have you thought about moving? I can't afford to right now. And honestly, I don't want to. That house is mine. Why should I be the one to leave? Imani set down her coffee. But I am making changes. I painted the bedroom. Moved furniture around. Got rid of most of his stuff. Donated his clothes, threw away anything that reminded me of him. Good. You need to reclaim your space. Dr. Hayes stopped by my office yesterday, Imani said, changing the subject. He wanted to talk about a promotion. A promotion? Grace's eyes lit up. That's great news. What kind of promotion? Charge nurse for the cardiac unit. It's a supervisory role, more responsibility, better pay. He said they've been considering me for a while, but with everything going on, he wanted to make sure I was in a good place to take it on. Are you? Imani considered the question. A month ago she would have said no. She had been drowning, barely keeping her head above water with grief and anger and shock. But something had shifted in recent weeks. The initial devastation had settled into a kind of determined strength. I think I am. It would be good for me, actually. Something to focus on besides the divorce and the criminal case. When would you start? Next month if I accept. Dr. Hayes said to take a week to think about it. After her shift, Imani drove to Terrence's office for their weekly meeting. These check-ins had become routine, reviewing the status of the divorce, the restraining orders, the criminal case. I have news, Terrence said as soon as she sat down. The prosecutor offered Brandon and Nicole a plea deal. Imani's stomach clenched. What kind of deal? They want them to plead guilty to conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, and identity theft. In exchange, they'll drop the attempted murder charges and the elder abuse charge against Nicole. Brandon would get 12 years in federal prison, Nicole would get 10. And if they don't take it? Then it goes to trial and they risk getting 20 years or more if convicted on all charges. Terrence leaned back in his chair. Their lawyers are advising them to take it. The evidence is overwhelming. They'd be foolish not to. 12 years. 10 years. Imani tried to process what that meant. Brandon would be 47 when he got out. Nicole would be 42. When will they decide? They have until next week. But I'd be surprised if they turned it down. What does this mean for the divorce? It actually helps us. A guilty plea means we don't have to prove his crimes in civil court. The criminal conviction establishes fault. Makes it much easier to argue that he should forfeit his claim to marital assets. Terrence pulled up documents on his computer. I've also been working on the property settlement. The house is appraised at $420,000. You owe $300,000 on the mortgage. That leaves about $120,000 in equity. He wants half of that. He does. Or rather, his lawyer does. I've told them absolutely not. Given that he was planning to steal the house anyway, and that he used marital funds to support his affair, I'm arguing you should get the house free and clear. Will the judge agree? I think so. We have a strong case. But there might need to be some negotiation. Maybe you keep the house and he gets to keep his full 401k without dividing it. Something like that. They spent an hour going through finances, strategizing, planning. When Imani left the office, her head was spinning with numbers and legal terms and possibilities. She drove to her mother's house, where Patty was back living after weeks of hiding. Her mother had resumed her normal life, returned to church, reconnected with neighbors. The story had spread, of course, but people were supportive rather than judgmental. How are you, baby? Patty asked, pouring them both sweet tea as they sat on the back porch. Tired? But okay. Imani sipped her tea, letting the sweetness ground her. Brandon and Nicole might take a plea deal. What do you think about that? Part of me wants them to go to trial, to have to face everything publicly. But mostly I just want it over. I want to move on. That's understandable. Patty rocked slowly in her chair, looking out at the garden. I've been thinking a lot about Nicole. About where things went wrong with her. Mom, this isn't your fault. I know. But I'm her mother. I raised her. I must have missed something, some sign that she could do something like this. She made her own choices. You taught both of us right from wrong. She chose to ignore that. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching birds flit around the feeder. Finally, Patty spoke again. I got a letter from her. From jail. Imani sat up straighter. What did it say? She wants to talk. Says she wants to explain, to apologize. Patty pulled the letter from her pocket and handed it to Imani. The handwriting was Nicole's, familiar from years of birthday cards and shopping lists. Imani read. Mom, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know what I did is unforgivable. But I need you to understand that I never meant to hurt you. I was drowning in debt, in bad decisions, and I thought this was the only way out. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please come visit me. Please give me a chance to explain. Your daughter, Nicole. Imani handed the letter back. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. Part of me wants to go, to hear what she has to say. She's still my daughter, no matter what she's done. Patty folded the letter carefully. But another part of me thinks it's too soon, that she needs to face consequences without me there to comfort her. You don't owe her anything, Mom. Not after what she tried to do. I know. But mothers don't work that way. My love for her doesn't just turn off because she did something terrible. I couldn't forgive her, Imani said firmly. I won't forgive either of them. Not Nicole, not Brandon. They made their choices and now they're living with the consequences. That's your right. Nobody's asking you to forgive them. The conversation left Imani unsettled. She drove home thinking about forgiveness, about moving on, about what it meant to truly let go of anger. At home, she walked through the house she had shared with Brandon. She had changed so much already. New paint in the bedroom, soft blue instead of the beige Brandon had preferred. New bedding, bright green and yellow, cheerful and light. She had moved the furniture, rearranged the living room, hung different pictures on the walls. But it wasn't enough. She could still feel Brandon everywhere, still sense his presence in rooms they had shared. She needed something more drastic. The next day she called a contractor. By the end of the week they were ripping out the old kitchen counters, replacing them with bright white quartz. She had the carpets torn up, beautiful hardwood floors installed underneath. She painted the living room a warm terracotta, the bathroom a deep teal. You're really going for it, Grace said when she stopped by one evening. The house was chaos, with drop cloths everywhere and the smell of fresh paint lingering. I'm making it mine. Not ours. Mine. Imani gestured around the living room. Every time I look at something, I want to see choices I made, not compromises with Brandon. How much is all this costing? Too much probably. But I have savings. And honestly, it's cheaper than therapy. Imani laughed, though it came out a bit hollow. Besides, the house will be worth more when everything is settled. It's an investment. 2 weeks later, Terrence called with news. They took the plea deal. Both of them. They're pleading guilty next Monday. Imani sat down heavily on her newly painted porch steps. It's really over then? The criminal case, yes. They'll be sentenced in a few weeks. But our divorce case is still ongoing. With the guilty plea, though, we should be able to move much faster. How fast? I'm hoping we can finalize everything within 2 months. Get the house awarded to you, divide the remaining assets, and be done. 2 months. 8 more weeks and she would be officially divorced. Officially free. Okay, she said. Let's do it. The guilty plea hearing was brief. Imani attended, sitting in the same courtroom where they had been arraigned. Brandon and Nicole stood before the judge, admitting their guilt in flat, defeated voices. There were no dramatics, no last-minute protests of innocence. Just 2 people accepting the consequences of their choices. Judge Foster accepted the pleas and scheduled sentencing for 4 weeks later. As they were let out, Brandon tried to catch Imani's eye. She looked away. After the hearing, Imani stood on the courthouse steps, breathing in the cool air. March had turned into April, winter finally releasing its grip. The trees were starting to bud, small hints of green appearing on branches that had been bare for months. How do you feel? Terrence asked. Lighter, Imani said, surprised to realize it was true. Like I can finally breathe again. That evening, she accepted Dr. Hayes' offer to become charge nurse. The promotion came with a raise of $15,000 a year, enough to comfortably cover her mortgage and bills without worrying. She celebrated with Patty and Grace at her favorite restaurant, ordering expensive wine and laughing in a way she hadn't in months. For the first time since Nicole's phone call, Imani felt like herself again. Not the person she had been before Brandon's betrayal, but someone new. Someone stronger. To new beginnings, Grace toasted, raising her glass. To surviving, Patty added. To freedom, Imani said, clinking her glass against theirs. And she meant it. She was free. Free from Brandon's lies, from Nicole's manipulation, from the weight of a marriage that had been built on deception. The divorce wasn't finalized yet. The criminal sentencing was still weeks away. But the hard part was over. She had faced the worst, had stood up for herself, had refused to be a victim. Now came the good part. Building a life that was entirely, completely, beautifully hers. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for a Wednesday morning in late April. Imani had debated whether to attend. Part of her wanted to be done with Brandon and Nicole completely, to never see them again. But another part knew she needed closure, needed to see this through to the end. Terrence encouraged her to come. You're entitled to give a victim impact statement. Tell the judge how their actions affected you. It might influence the sentencing. Will it make a difference? Imani asked. Maybe. But even if it doesn't, saying it might help you. The morning of the sentencing, Imani dressed carefully in a red dress she had bought specifically for this day. Not black, not somber. Red. Powerful. Alive. Grace had offered to come with her, but Imani declined. This was something she needed to do alone. Well, not entirely alone. Patty was coming, sitting in the gallery to support her daughter. The courthouse was busier than it had been for the previous hearings. More reporters, cameras outside, people wanting to see how this story ended. Imani walked through them with her head high, refusing to hide or be ashamed. She had done nothing wrong. Inside the courtroom, she saw Brandon and Nicole for the first time in weeks. They looked terrible. Brandon had lost weight, his suit hanging loose on his frame. Nicole's hair had grown out, roots showing, no longer the polished woman who had stood at the fake funeral. They saw her too. Nicole's face crumpled, tears starting immediately. Brandon just stared, his expression unreadable. The prosecutor, Janet Rodriguez, approached Imani. Are you ready for this? As ready as I'll ever be. Remember, address the judge directly. Tell your story. Don't hold back. At 10 a.m. sharp, Judge Foster entered and everyone rose. She settled into her seat, shuffling papers, then looked out at the courtroom. We're here for sentencing in the case of United States versus Brandon Carter and Nicole Carter. Both defendants have pleaded guilty to multiple counts of fraud, forgery, and identity theft. She looked at the defendants. Before I impose sentence, I want to hear from the victims. The court will first hear from Imani Carter. Imani stood, her legs steady beneath her. She walked to the podium facing the judge. She could feel everyone's eyes on her, the reporters, the spectators, and most of all Brandon and Nicole. "Your Honor," she began, her voice clear and strong. "I'm here today to tell you about the impact of what Brandon Carter and Nicole Carter did to me and my family." She paused, organizing her thoughts. She had written and rewritten this statement a dozen times, but now, standing here, she spoke from the heart. 6 months ago I was a different person. I trusted my husband completely. I believed in my marriage. I had a complicated relationship with my sister, but I never doubted that she loved me in her own way. I felt secure in my life, in my family, in my future. Then I learned the truth. My husband was having an affair with my sister. Together they plotted to fake my mother's death, forge documents, and steal everything I owned. They researched how to commit these crimes. They opened secret bank accounts. They made detailed plans about how to escape to another country once they had the money. But it was worse than that. They didn't just want to steal from me. Brandon added my sister to my life insurance policy without my knowledge. He wrote notes about causing my death and making it look like an accident. They weren't just planning to ruin my life. They were planning to end it. Imani's voice wavered for just a moment, but she steadied herself. This was important. This needed to be said. The emotional damage they caused is something I'm still processing. I have trouble sleeping. I have anxiety about trusting people. I second-guess every relationship, every friendship, wondering if people are really who they say they are. They took my sense of safety and security and destroyed it. But beyond the emotional harm, there was real financial damage. Brandon stole money from our joint accounts. He used marital funds to support his affair. He planned to steal my house, my savings, everything I had worked for. Even now, as we go through divorce proceedings, I'm spending thousands of dollars on lawyers, accountants, and financial advisors to untangle the mess he created. My sister, Nicole, orchestrated a fake funeral for our mother. She accepted condolences from people who genuinely cared about our family. She stood in front of those people and lied, performed grief for someone who wasn't dead, all while planning to steal an inheritance that never existed. She manipulated everyone around her, including me. Imani looked directly at Brandon and Nicole now. They both stared at the floor, unable to meet her eyes. "I want you to understand something. I'm not here asking for revenge. I'm not here out of anger, though I have every right to be angry. I'm here because what they did was wrong. What they did was criminal. And they need to face consequences for their actions. People make mistakes. People hurt each other. But what Brandon and Nicole did wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an accident or a moment of poor judgment. It was calculated, planned, and deliberate. They spent months preparing to destroy my life. And they would have succeeded if my mother hadn't accidentally discovered their plans. Your Honor, I ask you to consider the severity of what they did. Consider the planning, the deception, the absolute disregard for anyone but themselves. Consider that they were willing to commit crimes, to destroy families, to possibly even commit murder, all for money. I also ask you to consider what could have happened if they hadn't been caught. Would they have gone through with hurting me? Would they have committed more crimes? Would anyone have stopped them? I believe in second chances. I believe people can change. But I also believe actions have consequences. And the consequences here need to match the severity of what was done. Imani took a breath. Finally, I want to say this. Despite everything they did, despite all the pain and betrayal, I'm going to be okay. I have a loving mother. I have good friends. I have a career I love. I'm rebuilding my life, and it's going to be better than it was before. Not because of what they did, but in spite of it. What Brandon and Nicole took from me, I'm taking back. My sense of self. My ability to trust. My future. They tried to destroy me and they failed. That's something I want you to know, Your Honor. They failed. She stepped back from the podium and returned to her seat. Her hands were shaking, but she felt good. Powerful. She had said what needed to be said. Judge Foster nodded. Thank you, Mrs. Carter. The court will now hear from Patricia Carter. Patty stood, walking to the podium with quiet dignity. She looked at Nicole for a long moment, and Imani saw her sister flinch. Your Honor, I'm Nicole's mother. I gave birth to her, raised her, loved her for 32 years. And I never thought I would be standing in a courtroom speaking against my own daughter. What Nicole did wasn't just criminal. It was a betrayal of everything I taught her about family, about honesty, about treating people with respect. She plotted to fake my death. My death, Your Honor. She went so far as to plan a funeral, to stand in front of people and accept their grief for someone who wasn't dead. I won't go into all the details of what she and Brandon planned. Imani has covered that. But I want to say this, Nicole made choices. She chose to have an affair with her sister's husband. She chose to plan this elaborate fraud. She chose to lie to me, to Imani, to everyone who cared about her. As her mother, I'm devastated. I feel like I failed her somehow, like I should have seen this coming, should have been able to stop it. But I also know she's an adult. She's responsible for her actions. I love my daughter. I always will. But love doesn't mean excusing what she did or asking for leniency she doesn't deserve. Nicole needs to face the consequences of her choices. Maybe years from now, after she's served her time and done the work to become a better person, maybe then we can have a relationship again. But not now. Not until she's truly understood the magnitude of what she did. Patty's voice broke. Your Honor, please don't go easy on her because I'm her mother and I'm asking you to. Please give her a sentence that reflects the seriousness of her crimes. That's what she needs. That's what we all need. Patty stepped down, wiping tears from her eyes. Imani reached out and squeezed her hand as she sat down. Judge Foster looked at the defendants. Does either of you wish to address the court before sentencing? Brandon stood. His lawyer had clearly coached him, but he still looked shaky, uncertain. Your Honor, I know what I did was wrong. There's no excuse for it. I betrayed my wife, planned terrible things, committed crimes. I've had a lot of time to think about it in jail and I'm ashamed. He glanced at Imani. Imani, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything. I know I destroyed us, destroyed everything we built. But I want you to know I'm sorry. Judge Foster's expression didn't change. Is that all? Yes, Your Honor. Nicole stood next. She was crying, could barely speak through the sobs. I don't know who I became. I don't recognize the person who did these things. I was jealous of Imani, always had been. She was smarter, more successful, had everything I wanted. And instead of dealing with that in a healthy way, I let it poison me. Mom, I'm so sorry. Imani, I'm so sorry. I know you'll never forgive me and you shouldn't. I don't forgive myself. Judge Foster let the silence stretch for a moment. Then she spoke. I've reviewed the case file extensively. I've read the evidence, the witness statements, the psychological evaluations of both defendants. This is one of the most calculated, heartless schemes I've encountered in my years on the bench. The plea agreement calls for 12 years for Brandon Carter and 10 years for Nicole Carter. The prosecution and defense have asked me to accept this agreement. However, I have the discretion to depart from it if I find it inadequate. Imani held her breath. Having heard the victim impact statements today, having reviewed the extensive planning that went into these crimes, and having considered the fact that both defendants were prepared to potentially commit murder for financial gain, I find the plea agreement to be adequate but at the minimum end of appropriate. Brandon Carter, you are sentenced to 12 years in federal prison followed by 5 years of supervised release. You will pay full restitution to the victims for all financial damages, to be determined at a later hearing. You are permanently prohibited from contacting Imani Carter or Patricia Carter. Nicole Carter, you are sentenced to 10 years in federal prison followed by 5 years of supervised release. You will also pay full restitution to the victims. You are permanently prohibited from contacting Imani Carter. The judge paused. I want both of you to understand something. You didn't just commit fraud. You didn't just steal money. You tried to destroy your family. You tried to destroy people who loved you and trusted you. That kind of betrayal doesn't just hurt the victims. It damages society's faith in basic human relationships. It makes people afraid to trust their spouses, their siblings, their family members. I hope you use your time in prison to genuinely reflect on what you've done and to become better people. But that's up to you. Right now, you need to pay for your crimes. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down with a sharp crack. It was over. Brandon and Nicole were let out in handcuffs. Nicole was still crying. Brandon turned one last time to look at Imani, his face a mask of regret. She looked back at him without expression. She felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no sadness. Just a sense of finality, of a chapter closing. Outside the courthouse, reporters rushed toward Imani and Patty. Microphones were shoved in their faces, questions shouted. How do you feel about the sentencing? Will you ever forgive your sister? What's next for you? Terrence stepped in front of them, shielding them from the cameras. My clients have no comment at this time. Please respect their privacy. They made it to Terrence's car and drove away, leaving the chaos behind. How are you? Terrence asked, glancing at Imani in the rearview mirror. I'm okay. Really, I am. And she meant it. The weight she had been carrying for months had lifted. It's finally over. Not quite. We still have to finalize the divorce settlement. But the hard part is done. When will that be resolved? I'm hoping within a month. Brandon's lawyer wants to settle quickly now that the criminal case is resolved. They know they don't have leverage anymore. 1 month. 30 more days and she would be completely free. That evening, Imani sat on her porch watching the sunset. The house renovations were finished. The walls were painted in colors she loved. The furniture was arranged how she wanted it. Everything in this space was hers, chosen by her, reflecting her taste and personality. Her phone buzzed. A text from Grace. I'm proud of you. You're the strongest person I know. Imani smiled. She didn't feel particularly strong. She felt tired, wrung out, ready to be done with all of this. But she had survived. She had stood up in court and told her story. She had watched Brandon and Nicole be sentenced for their crimes. And now, finally, she could start to truly move forward. The month following the sentencing passed in a blur of legal paperwork and final settlements. Imani threw herself into her new role as charge nurse, finding comfort in the routine of work, in helping patients, in the concrete problems she could actually solve. You're doing great, Dr. Hayes told her during her first performance review. The staff respects you. The patients love you. You're a natural leader. Thank you. It's been good for me having something productive to focus on. How are things going with your personal situation? Better. The divorce should be finalized next week. Terrence had negotiated a settlement that was, in his words, about as good as we could hope for. Imani got the house free and clear. The mortgage would be refinanced in her name only. She also got half of the liquid assets from their joint accounts and a portion of Brandon's 401k. All told, you're walking away with about $350,000 in assets, Terrence explained during their final meeting. The house, your savings, your portion of the retirement accounts. That's solid financial ground to start over on. What about restitution? The judge said they had to pay me back for what they stole. That's still being calculated. The prosecutor is working with a forensic accountant to trace all the money Brandon moved to the Bahamas account. But realistically, you're not going to see much of that money back. They've both been convicted felons. They'll have no income for the next decade. The restitution order will follow them for life, but actual payment will be minimal. I figured. I'm not counting on it. Smart. The important thing is you're financially stable. You have your house, your career, your savings. You're going to be fine. The divorce hearing was scheduled for a Wednesday morning, the same courtroom where the criminal proceedings had taken place. Brandon appeared via video from the federal facility where he was being held before transfer to a permanent prison. He looked even thinner, his face gaunt. The judge, a different one this time, reviewed the settlement agreement. Mr. Carter, do you agree to these terms? On the screen, Brandon nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Nicole stood next. She was crying, could barely speak through the sobs. I don't know who I became. I don't recognize the person who did these things. I was jealous of Imani, always had been. She was smarter, more successful, had everything I wanted. And instead of dealing with that in a healthy way, I let it poison me. Mom, I'm so sorry. Imani, I'm so sorry. I know you'll never forgive me and you shouldn't. I don't forgive myself. Judge Foster let the silence stretch for a moment. Then she spoke. I've reviewed the case file extensively. I've read the evidence, the witness statements, the psychological evaluations of both defendants. This is one of the most calculated, heartless schemes I've encountered in my years on the bench. The plea agreement calls for 12 years for Brandon Carter and 10 years for Nicole Carter. The prosecution and defense have asked me to accept this agreement. However, I have the discretion to depart from it if I find it inadequate. Imani held her breath. Having heard the victim impact statements today, having reviewed the extensive planning that went into these crimes, and having considered the fact that both defendants were prepared to potentially commit murder for financial gain, I find the plea agreement to be adequate but at the minimum end of appropriate. Brandon Carter, you are sentenced to 12 years in federal prison followed by 5 years of supervised release. You will pay full restitution to the victims for all financial damages, to be determined at a later hearing. You are permanently prohibited from contacting Imani Carter or Patricia Carter. Nicole Carter, you are sentenced to 10 years in federal prison followed by 5 years of supervised release. You will also pay full restitution to the victims. You are permanently prohibited from contacting Imani Carter. The judge paused. I want both of you to understand something. You didn't just commit fraud. You didn't just steal money. You tried to destroy your family. You tried to destroy people who loved you and trusted you. That kind of betrayal doesn't just hurt the victims. It damages society's faith in basic human relationships. It makes people afraid to trust their spouses, their siblings, their family members. I hope you use your time in prison to genuinely reflect on what you've done and to become better people. But that's up to you. Right now, you need to pay for your crimes. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down with a sharp crack. It was over. Brandon and Nicole were let out in handcuffs. Nicole was still crying. Brandon turned one last time to look at Imani, his face a mask of regret. She looked back at him without expression. She felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no sadness. Just a sense of finality, of a chapter closing. Outside the courthouse, reporters rushed toward Imani and Patty. Microphones were shoved in their faces, questions shouted. How do you feel about the sentencing? Will you ever forgive your sister? What's next for you? Terrence stepped in front of them, shielding them from the cameras. My clients have no comment at this time. Please respect their privacy. They made it to Terrence's car and drove away, leaving the chaos behind. How are you? Terrence asked, glancing at Imani in the rearview mirror. I'm okay. Really, I am. And she meant it. The weight she had been carrying for months had lifted. It's finally over. Not quite. We still have to finalize the divorce settlement. But the hard part is done. When will that be resolved? I'm hoping within a month. Brandon's lawyer wants to settle quickly now that the criminal case is resolved. They know they don't have leverage anymore. 1 month. 30 more days and she would be completely free. That evening, Imani sat on her porch watching the sunset. The house renovations were finished. The walls were painted in colors she loved. The furniture was arranged how she wanted it. Everything in this space was hers, chosen by her, reflecting her taste and personality. Her phone buzzed. A text from Grace. I'm proud of you. You're the strongest person I know. Imani smiled. She didn't feel particularly strong. She felt tired, wrung out, ready to be done with all of this. But she had survived. She had stood up in court and told her story. She had watched Brandon and Nicole be sentenced for their crimes. And now, finally, she could start to truly move forward. The month following the sentencing passed in a blur of legal paperwork and final settlements. Imani threw herself into her new role as charge nurse, finding comfort in the routine of work, in helping patients, in the concrete problems she could actually solve. You're doing great, Dr. Hayes told her during her first performance review. The staff respects you. The patients love you. You're a natural leader. Thank you. It's been good for me having something productive to focus on. How are things going with your personal situation? Better. The divorce should be finalized next week. Terrence had negotiated a settlement that was, in his words, about as good as we could hope for. Imani got the house free and clear. The mortgage would be refinanced in her name only. She also got half of the liquid assets from their joint accounts and a portion of Brandon's 401k. All told, you're walking away with about $350,000 in assets, Terrence explained during their final meeting. The house, your savings, your portion of the retirement accounts. That's solid financial ground to start over on. What about restitution? The judge said they had to pay me back for what they stole. That's still being calculated. The prosecutor is working with a forensic accountant to trace all the money Brandon moved to the Bahamas account. But realistically, you're not going to see much of that money back. They've both been convicted felons. They'll have no income for the next decade. The restitution order will follow them for life, but actual payment will be minimal. I figured. I'm not counting on it. Smart. The important thing is you're financially stable. You have your house, your career, your savings. You're going to be fine. The divorce hearing was scheduled for a Wednesday morning, the same courtroom where the criminal proceedings had taken place. Brandon appeared via video from the federal facility where he was being held before transfer to a permanent prison. He looked even thinner, his face gaunt. The judge, a different one this time, reviewed the settlement agreement. Mr. Carter, do you agree to these terms? On the screen, Brandon nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Carter? Yes, Your Honor. Then by the power vested in me by the state of Texas, I declare this marriage dissolved. You are both free to remarry. The settlement agreement is entered into the record. Court is adjourned. That was it. 7 years of marriage, ended in less than 5 minutes. Imani signed the final papers, received her copies, and walked out of the courthouse a single woman. She drove to her mother's house, where Patty was waiting with lunch already prepared. How do you feel? Her mother asked as they sat down to eat. Free. Really truly free. Like I can finally breathe all the way. Imani took a bite of her sandwich. He's not my husband anymore. He's not my problem anymore. He's just a person I used to know who made terrible choices. Good. That's the right attitude. Have you heard from Nicole? Patty nodded slowly. She's written me several more letters. Still asking to visit, to talk. I'm not ready yet. Maybe someday, but not now. I don't think I'll ever be ready. That's your right, baby. Nobody can tell you that you have to forgive her or have a relationship with her. What she did to you goes beyond what she did to me. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Then Patty spoke again. I've been thinking about doing some traveling. I never really did when your father was alive. He didn't like to leave home. But I've always wanted to see more of the country. Where would you go? Maybe start with the national parks. Yellowstone, Grand Canyon, places like that. Would you want to come with me? Take a trip together? Imani considered it. A vacation sounded wonderful, actually. She had vacation time saved up. The idea of getting away, seeing new places, spending time with her mother without the stress of legal battles hanging over them, was appealing. Yes, I like that. Let's plan a trip. Over the next few weeks, they researched and planned. They decided on a 2-week road trip through the Southwest, hitting several national parks. Imani requested the time off from work, booked hotels, mapped out their route. This is going to be good for both of us, Patty said as they went over the itinerary. A chance to rest, to heal, to just be together. The trip was scheduled for late June. In the meantime, Imani continued settling into her new life. She joined a book club at the local library, something she had always wanted to do but never had time for when she was married. She started taking yoga classes. She rediscovered hobbies she had let fall by the wayside during her marriage. Grace dragged her to a girls' night out one Friday evening. You need to get out of that house, Grace insisted. You need to remember that life exists beyond work and home. They went to a wine bar downtown, met up with some other nurses from the hospital, and spent the evening laughing and talking about everything except Brandon and Nicole. For a few hours, Imani was just a woman out with friends, enjoying herself, living her life. This is nice, she admitted to Grace. I forgot what it's like to just relax. You've been through something traumatic. You're allowed to take time to heal. But you're also allowed to have fun. To live. To be happy. That night, lying in bed in her freshly painted bedroom, Imani realized Grace was right. She was allowed to be happy. She didn't have to carry the weight of what Brandon and Nicole had done forever. She could set it down, walk away, build something new. The trip with Patty was exactly what Imani needed. They drove through Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, spending their days hiking through stunning landscapes and their evenings talking over dinner at small-town restaurants. I feel like myself again, Imani said one night as they sat under stars so bright and numerous she couldn't believe they were real. Not the person I was before Brandon, because I can't go back to that. But a new version. Someone stronger. You're stronger. You've been through something that would have broken a lot of people, and you've come through it with your kindness and your sense of self intact. That's remarkable. They visited the Grand Canyon, standing at the edge and staring out at the vast expanse. Imani felt small in the best way, her problems and pain put into perspective by the ancient rock and endless sky. Makes you realize how short life is, Patty said. How important it is to spend it with people who love you, doing things that matter. Yeah, it does. When they returned home, tanned and rested, Imani felt ready to truly embrace her new life. She had mourned her marriage, processed the betrayal, faced her betrayers in court, and come out the other side. Now it was time to look forward. At work, she continued to excel. Dr. Hayes approached her about pursuing a master's degree in nursing, possibly moving into administration eventually. You have leadership potential, he said. I think you could go far in this field if you wanted to. I'll think about it, Imani said, and she meant it. Why not go back to school? Why not advance her career? She had the time now, the mental space, the freedom to make choices based solely on what she wanted. She reconnected with old friends from college who had fallen out of touch over the years. She accepted invitations to parties, dinners, events. She said yes to life more often than she said no. One Saturday afternoon, she was at a farmer's market when she ran into Brandon's mother. They hadn't spoken since that phone call months ago. The older woman looked shocked to see her. Imani, she said quietly. How are you? I'm well. How are you? I'm. She trailed off, clearly unsure what to say. I wanted to apologize. I didn't believe you when you told me what Brandon had done. I thought you must have been confused or mistaken. But then I saw the evidence at his trial. I saw what he was capable of. And I'm so sorry. Thank you for saying that. He was my son. I loved him. But what he did was unforgivable. I don't blame you for pressing charges, for divorcing him, for any of it. You did what you had to do. I appreciate that. Are you doing okay? Really? Imani considered the question. 6 months ago the answer would have been no. 3 months ago maybe. But now, yes, I really am. It was hard and it took time, but I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. I'm happy. Brandon's mother nodded, tears in her eyes. I'm glad. You deserve to be happy. They parted ways and Imani continued through the market, buying fresh vegetables and flowers for her house. The encounter had been strange but cathartic in its own way. Even Brandon's mother had acknowledged what he'd done was wrong. Even his own family didn't defend his actions. That evening, Imani got a phone call from Agent Mills. They hadn't spoken in months. I wanted to update you, the agent said. Brandon and Nicole have both been transferred to their permanent facilities. Brandon is at a federal prison in Pennsylvania. Nicole is at one in West Virginia. They won't be eligible for parole for at least 8 years. Okay. Thank you for letting me know. How are you doing? I'm good. Really good, actually. I'm glad to hear it. You handled this whole situation with remarkable strength. I wanted you to know that. After the call, Imani sat on her porch thinking about the past year. The phone call from Nicole claiming Patty was dead. The discovery of the affair and the fraud. The arrests, the trials, the divorce. All of it seemed almost unreal now, like something that had happened to someone else. But it had happened to her. And she had survived it. More than survived, she had grown from it. She wasn't naive anymore, didn't trust blindly. But she also hadn't let betrayal turn her bitter or cynical. She still believed in love, in family, in the goodness of people. She had just learned to be more discerning, more protective of herself. Her phone buzzed. A text from Grace. Dinner tomorrow? There's someone I want you to meet. Imani smiled. Grace had been trying to set her up for weeks. She had resisted, saying she wasn't ready. And maybe she wasn't ready for a serious relationship. But a dinner with friends? Meeting new people? She could do that. Sure, she texted back. Looking forward to it. She set her phone down and looked out at her garden, at the flowers she had planted, at the home she had made entirely hers. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Justice had been served. Brandon and Nicole were in prison. The divorce was final. The house was hers. Her life was hers. And for the first time in a long time that felt like more than enough. Felt like everything. Summer faded into fall, and with it came a rhythm to Imani's life that felt both comfortable and exciting. She had settled into her role as charge nurse, earning the respect of her colleagues and the trust of her patients. The work was challenging but rewarding, giving her a sense of purpose that had nothing to do with the chaos of the past year. The dinner Grace had set up turned out to be pleasant, though nothing romantic developed from it. The man, a teacher named Carlos, was kind and interesting, but neither of them felt a spark. They parted as friends, which felt right to Imani. She wasn't looking for love. She was looking for herself. I think I'm okay being single for a while, she told Grace over coffee one morning. I spent 7 years of my life focused on being someone's wife. Maybe it's time I figure out who I am when I'm just me. I respect that. But don't close yourself off completely. When you're ready, the right person will come along. Maybe. We'll see. In October, Imani enrolled in an online master's program in nursing administration. The classes were challenging but engaging, pushing her to think about healthcare in new ways. She studied in the evenings, completed assignments on weekends, slowly working toward a degree that would open new doors. Patty was proud. Look at you, going back to school, advancing your career. I'm so impressed with how you've handled everything. I learned from the best, Imani said, hugging her mother. You showed me what strength looks like. They had grown closer through the ordeal, their relationship deepening from the typical mother-daughter dynamic into a genuine friendship. They talked daily, had lunch together twice a week, supported each other through the continued healing process. Patty had finally responded to Nicole's letters, agreeing to a visit at the prison. She had gone once in late September and come back looking drained. How was it? Imani had asked. Difficult. She's changed. Prison is hard on her. She's lost weight, looks older than her years. Patty had wiped her eyes. But she seems genuinely remorseful. She's in therapy working on herself. She knows she destroyed our relationship, knows she might never get it back. Do you think you'll visit again? Maybe. In time. I'm not ready to forgive her, not fully. But I can't just cut her out of my life completely. She's still my daughter. I understand. But I'm not there yet. I don't know if I'll ever be. And that's okay, baby. Nobody expects you to forgive her or have a relationship with her. What she did to you was different than what she did to me. Imani thought about that conversation often. Forgiveness seemed like such a simple concept, but in practice, it was incredibly complex. Could you forgive someone and still maintain boundaries? Could you forgive someone without letting them back into your life? Could you forgive someone for trying to destroy you? She didn't have answers to those questions yet. Maybe she never would. In November, Imani got an unexpected letter from Brandon. It had been forwarded through Terrence's office, who had screened it first to make sure it wasn't threatening or manipulative. "It's actually quite well written," Terrence had said over the phone. "Thoughtful. But I wanted you to have the option not to read it if you didn't want to." Imani took the letter home and left it on her kitchen counter for 3 days before she could bring herself to open it. Finally, on a quiet Sunday morning, she sat down with coffee and unfolded the pages. "Dear Imani," it began. "I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect you to respond. I don't expect anything from you, and I know I have no right to. But I needed to write this, needed to try to explain, even though I know no explanation will ever be enough. I was a coward. That's the simple truth. I was unhappy, but instead of talking to you about it, instead of working on our marriage or leaving honestly, I chose the worst possible path. I cheated. I lied. I planned terrible things. And I convinced myself I was justified because I was unhappy, because I felt trapped, because I wanted more than what we had. But that's all garbage. Those aren't reasons. They're excuses. The truth is I was selfish. I wanted everything. I wanted you, the stable life we had, the respect of being a married man. But I also wanted Nicole, wanted the excitement of the affair, wanted the fantasy of starting over with someone new. And when those two things couldn't coexist, instead of making a choice like an adult, I decided to destroy everything. I can't explain the planning for your death except to say that I wasn't thinking of you as a person anymore. You had become an obstacle to what I wanted. That's horrifying to admit. That's something I have to live with forever. I was planning to kill you. To end your life. For money and convenience. I don't know who that person was. Sitting here in prison thinking about what I did, I can't recognize myself in those actions. But I was that person. I made those choices. And I can't take them back. I'm in therapy. Mandatory but also voluntary. I'm trying to understand how I became capable of such cruelty. How I lost myself so completely. The therapist talks about narcissism, about lack of empathy, about compartmentalization. Maybe those are parts of it. Or maybe I'm just fundamentally broken in some way. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Not because sorry makes any difference, but because it's true. I'm sorry I betrayed you. I'm sorry I tried to destroy you. I'm sorry I wasted 7 years of your life on a marriage that was based on lies. If there's any small comfort I can offer, it's this. You're better off without me. You always were. You deserved someone who saw your worth, who cherished you, who built you up instead of tearing you down. I hope you find that person someday. I hope you find happiness. I hope you're thriving. I hope you're living a life that brings you joy. Because despite everything I did, despite all the pain I caused, you survived. You won. Goodbye, Imani. Brandon. She read the letter twice, then set it down. She felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no satisfaction. Just a sort of hollow acknowledgement that he had written words on paper. She picked up her phone and texted Terrence, "Got Brandon's letter. I'm okay. Don't need to respond to it." Then she filed the letter away in a folder with other documents from the case and went about her day. Brandon was part of her past. He didn't get to be part of her present or future, not even through letters. As the holidays approached, Imani made plans with Patty to spend Thanksgiving and Christmas together, just the two of them. She declined invitations from Brandon's family, who had reached out trying to maintain some connection. She appreciated the gesture, but she needed clean breaks, needed to move forward without ties to that old life. "What are you thankful for this year?" Patty asked over Thanksgiving dinner. Imani thought about the question. A year ago, she had been married, thinking her life was stable and secure. Now she was divorced, her sister was in prison, and her entire world had been turned upside down. "I'm thankful for you," she said finally. "For catching their plan before it was too late. I'm thankful for my health, my job, my friends. I'm thankful for this house and the peace I feel in it now. And I'm thankful for the strength I found in myself that I didn't know I had." "That's beautiful, baby. What about you? What are you thankful for?" "I'm thankful for second chances. For the chance to rebuild our relationship stronger than before. For the chance to travel and see new things. For the chance to watch you grow into this incredible woman." Patty raised her glass. "And I'm thankful we're both still here, still together, still fighting." They clinked glasses and ate their meal, surrounded by the warmth of the home Imani had reclaimed as her own. In December, Imani completed her first semester of graduate school with straight A's. She was proud of herself, proud that she had managed to balance work, school and emotional recovery. She was building something new, something that belonged entirely to her. Grace threw her a small celebration at the hospital. "To the smartest, strongest woman I know," she toasted, and Imani's colleagues cheered. On New Year's Eve, Imani stayed home alone, which might have seemed sad to some people but felt perfect to her. She made her favorite meal, opened a bottle of wine, and sat on her porch wrapped in a blanket, watching the neighborhood around her celebrate. At midnight, as fireworks exploded in the distance, she made a resolution. Not the typical resolutions about losing weight or exercising more. Something deeper. "This year," she said out loud to the universe, "I choose joy. I choose peace. I choose to let go of everything that doesn't serve me and embrace everything that does. I choose to live fully, freely, authentically. I choose me." The words felt powerful, transformative. She had spent so much of the past year in reaction mode, dealing with crises, navigating legal systems, processing trauma. This year would be different. This year would be about building, not surviving. In January, Imani got a call from the prosecutor's office. They had recovered some of the money from the Bahamas account and were distributing restitution to the victims. "It's not the full amount," the assistant prosecutor explained. "But we recovered about $40,000. After legal fees and processing, you'll receive a check for $32,000. It was more than Imani had expected. Not life-changing money but substantial enough to feel like a small victory. She deposited the check and used part of it to pay down her mortgage, part to add to her emergency savings, and a small portion to book another trip with her mother, this time to New England in the fall to see the leaves change. "We're building memories," Patty said when Imani told her about the trip. "Good memories to replace the bad ones." At work, Dr. Hayes approached Imani about a new opportunity. The hospital was opening a satellite clinic in an underserved part of the city, and they needed someone to manage it. "It would be a significant promotion," he explained. "More responsibility but also more autonomy. You'd essentially be running your own clinic under the hospital's umbrella. I think you're ready for it." Imani thought about it for a week. It was a big step, more responsibility than she'd ever had. But it was also exciting, a chance to make a real difference in people's lives. "I'll do it," she told Dr. Hayes. "When do I start?" "Spring. We're still building out the space. But I'm glad you said yes. You're going to do great things." As winter turned to spring, Imani felt herself transforming. Not healing because healing implied she had been broken. She hadn't been broken. She had been hurt, betrayed, tested. But she had never broken. Instead, she had bent, adapted, grown stronger. She looked different too. She had cut her hair shorter, a sleek style that felt modern and professional. She had bought new clothes, building a wardrobe that reflected who she was now rather than who she had been. She moved through the world with more confidence, more certainty. People noticed. "You're glowing," Grace commented one day. "I don't know what you're doing but keep doing it." "I'm just living," Imani said. Really living for the first time in a long time. One Saturday afternoon she was at a coffee shop working on a paper for her graduate class when someone sat down at the table next to her. She glanced up and did a double take. It was Terrence. "Imani?" He looked surprised but pleased. "I didn't expect to run into you here. I come here a lot. Good coffee, good atmosphere for studying." She gestured to her laptop. "Working on my master's degree." "That's fantastic. Good for you." He hesitated. "Do you mind if I join you? Or would you rather be alone?" "No, join me. I could use a break anyway." They talked for over an hour, catching up on life beyond the legal case that had brought them together. Terrence had recently made partner at his firm. He had moved to a new apartment downtown. He was training for a marathon. "You seem really happy," Imani observed. "I am. Life's good right now." He paused. "You seem happy too. Different than when I first saw you at my office. Lighter. I feel lighter. Like I've put down something heavy I'd been carrying." That's what healing looks like. When they finally said goodbye, exchanging promises to stay in touch, Imani realized she had genuinely enjoyed the conversation. Not because she was interested in Terrence romantically, though he was undeniably attractive, but because she had enjoyed connecting with another person without fear or suspicion. That evening she called Patty. "I think I'm ready." "Ready for what?" "Ready to really move on. Not just survive or get through each day but actually build something new. I'm ready to stop being defined by what happened to me and start being defined by what I do next." "Oh baby. I'm so happy to hear you say that." It's been over a year now since Nicole's call. A year of legal battles and emotional processing and figuring things out. And I'm done looking backward. It's time to look forward. So what comes next? Imani smiled. Everything. The whole world. Whatever I want. And for the first time since this whole ordeal began, that felt not just possible but inevitable. She was ready for whatever came next. 18 months after Nicole's phone call claiming Patty was dead, Imani stood in the lobby of the new community health clinic, overseeing the final preparations for the grand opening. The space was bright and welcoming with blue walls and comfortable seating, everything designed to make patients feel cared for rather than processed. "It looks amazing," Grace said, walking through with her clipboard. She had agreed to transfer to the new clinic as Imani's assistant director. "You should be proud." "I am proud. This is going to make such a difference for this neighborhood." The clinic would officially open on Monday, offering affordable healthcare to a community that had been underserved for too long. Imani had spent months planning every detail, hiring staff, setting up systems, working with community leaders to build trust. It was her project. Her vision. Something entirely separate from Brandon, from the divorce, from everything that had happened. This was hers. "Are you nervous about Monday?" Grace asked. "Terrified," Imani admitted with a laugh. "But in a good way. The kind of nervous that means you're doing something that matters." That weekend, before the clinic opened, Imani and Patty took another trip together, this time to the beach. They rented a small cottage and spent 3 days walking along the shore, reading books and talking about life. "I'm so proud of you," Patty said as they watched the sunset on their last evening. "Look at everything you've built in the past year and a half. The clinic, your degree, progress, your whole new life. You didn't just survive what they did to you. You thrived. I had a good teacher." Imani leaned against her mother's shoulder. "You showed me how to be strong without being bitter. How to protect yourself without closing off. How to move forward without forgetting. Have you thought more about forgiveness? About Nicole?" It was a question Patty asked gently every few months, never pushing but checking in. She had continued visiting Nicole in prison, slowly rebuilding some kind of relationship. But she never expected Imani to do the same. "I think about it," Imani said honestly. "I'm not as angry anymore. The rage and betrayal have faded into something more like sadness for what could have been different. But I'm not ready to see her or talk to her. Maybe I never will be. And I'm okay with that. That's fair. Forgiveness isn't one size fits all. You get to decide what it looks like for you. I don't hate her anymore. I don't wish bad things on her. I hope she's actually learning from this, actually becoming a better person. But she's not part of my life and I don't think she should be. Not everyone deserves a second chance just because they're sorry." "What about Brandon?" "I don't think about him much anymore. When I do, he feels like a character in a story that happened to someone else. The life I had with him seems unreal now, like I was playing a part in someone else's play." Imani picked up a shell from the sand, turning it over in her hand. "I got another letter from him last month. Terrence forwarded it. I threw it away without reading it." "Good for you. I don't need his apologies or explanations. I don't need anything from him. He's serving his time and that's enough for me." The clinic's opening on Monday was a huge success. The community showed up in force, grateful to have quality healthcare close to home. Imani spent the day seeing patients, solving problems, and feeling more fulfilled than she had in years. "This is what I was meant to do," she told Grace at the end of that first week. "Not just nursing but this. Leading, building something, making a real difference. You're a natural. Honestly, I think you could run a hospital someday if you wanted to. Maybe. We'll see where life takes me." In May, Imani attended her graduate school commencement ceremony, receiving her master's degree in nursing administration. Patty was in the audience, cheering loudly when Imani's name was called. Grace was there too, along with several colleagues from the hospital. At the reception afterward, Dr. Hayes approached with a wide smile. "Congratulations. And I have a proposition for you." "What's that?" "I'm retiring in 2 years. The board has been discussing succession planning and your name keeps coming up. How would you feel about moving into hospital administration? Maybe assistant director of nursing, with an eye toward eventually taking over my role?" Imani's eyes widened. That's a significant opportunity. You've earned it. Think about it. We can talk more in a few months." That evening, celebrating with Patty over dinner, Imani felt overwhelmed by how much her life had changed. 2 years ago, I thought my life was on a certain track. Marriage, maybe kids eventually, Brandon's career advancing, me supporting from behind. And it all felt fine, safe, predictable. And now, Now I have opportunities one never imagined. A career that's taking off in ways I didn't expect. Complete autonomy over my life and choices. The freedom to be whoever I want to be. Imani raised her glass. It's terrifying and exciting and amazing all at once. That's what growth feels like. Summer arrived and with it came news from the prosecutor's office. Brandon and Nicole had both had their first parole hearings. It was denied as expected, the prosecutor told Imani over the phone. They'll both serve at least the minimum of their sentences. Brandon has another hearing in 3 years, Nicole in 2.5. Thank you for letting me know. How are you doing, Imani? Really? I'm good. Really good, actually. I think this is the last time we'll need to talk unless something changes dramatically. I'm glad. You took an impossible situation and came out stronger. That's not easy to do. After hanging up, Imani realized she felt nothing about the parole denial. Not relief, not satisfaction, not anything. Brandon and Nicole had become footnotes in her story, not the main characters. They would serve their time and she would live her life, and those two paths would never cross again. In August, Imani took a solo trip for the first time in her life. She flew to Portland, Oregon, rented a car, and drove along the coast for a week. She hiked through forests, ate seafood at tiny restaurants, watched the ocean from clifftops, and spent evenings journaling in her hotel room. I'm discovering myself, she wrote one night. Not the self I was with Brandon or the self I was after the betrayal, but the self I've always been underneath, the person I was meant to become. She took selfies on beaches, in forests, at viewpoints, and posted them on social media with captions about adventure and growth. Friends commented, offering encouragement and admiration. Some asked if she was dating anyone. Not yet, she would reply. But I'm open to it when the time is right. Because she was open to it now. The defensive walls she had built after Brandon's betrayal had come down. She had healed enough to imagine trusting someone again, loving someone again. Not desperately or needily, but from a place of wholeness and self-sufficiency. In September, Imani ran into Carlos, the teacher Grace had introduced her to over a year ago. They chatted for a few minutes and he asked if she'd like to get coffee sometime. I'd like that, Imani said, surprising herself. The coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into a second date, then a third. Carlos was kind, patient, comfortable with Imani's pace. They took things slowly, building a friendship first, letting any romantic feelings develop naturally. I like that you're not in a hurry, Carlos said one evening as they walked through a park. So many people rush into relationships trying to force something. You're different. I learned the hard way what happens when you don't really know someone before you commit to them, Imani said. I'm not making that mistake again. Fair enough. I appreciate your honesty. By October, they were officially dating, though Imani was careful to maintain her independence. She didn't introduce him to Patty for several months. She didn't post about him on social media. She kept her life balanced between work, school, family, friends, and this new relationship. He seems nice, Grace observed. Are you happy? I am. But I'm happy with or without him, and that's the difference. He's not my whole world. He's a part of it, a good part, but not the center. That's healthy. That's what a relationship should be. In November, almost 2 years after Nicole's phone call, Imani received an unexpected letter. Not from Brandon or Nicole, but from Brandon's mother. She opened it cautiously, remembering their last conversation at the farmer's market. Dear Imani, it read. I wanted to write to tell you that I've been following your life from a distance. Not stalking, I promise. Just occasionally checking in through mutual acquaintances, seeing how you're doing. I'm so proud of what you've built. The clinic, your degree, your career advancement. You've taken something terrible and transformed it into something beautiful. I also wanted you to know that I've started volunteering with an organization that helps women leaving abusive relationships. Working with them has helped me understand what you went through better. How the emotional abuse and manipulation from Brandon was just as serious as the more obvious crimes he committed. I don't expect a response to this letter. I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to know that I see you. I see your strength and resilience. And I'm sorry that my son caused you so much pain. I hope your life continues to be everything you deserve. With admiration, Patricia Carter. Imani read the letter twice, then filed it away with the other documents from that period of her life. She felt a sort of quiet appreciation for Brandon's mother's words, for her growth and understanding. But she didn't respond. Some bridges were meant to stay burned. As the holidays approached, Imani found herself genuinely excited. Not just going through the motions or trying to feel festive, but actually looking forward to celebrating. She hosted Thanksgiving at her house, inviting Patty, Grace, Carlos, and a few colleagues from the clinic. "This is my family," she said during the toast. "Not all of us are related by blood, but all of us are connected by choice, by love, by genuine care for each other. That's what matters." Everyone raised their glasses, and Imani felt a wave of contentment wash over her. This was what happiness looked like. Not perfect, not without challenges, but real and sustainable and built on truth. On New Year's Eve, exactly 2 years after she had made her resolution to choose joy, Imani stood on her porch once again, wrapped in a blanket, watching fireworks light up the sky. Carlos was inside, having come over for a quiet celebration. Patty had called earlier to wish her a happy new year. The clinic was thriving. Her career was advancing. She had a master's degree, a beautiful home, genuine friendships, and the possibility of love with someone who saw and valued her. She thought about Nicole's phone call 2 years ago. About how that single moment had shattered her world and forced her to rebuild from scratch. About how terrifying and painful it had been, and how lost she had felt. And then she thought about who she was now. Stronger, wiser, more complete. Living a life that was entirely her own, built on her terms, reflecting her values and dreams. Nicole had said, "She left everything to me. You get nothing." But Nicole had been wrong. Patty hadn't left Imani nothing. She had left her something far more valuable than money or property. She had left her an example of strength and dignity. She had left her unconditional love and support. She had left her the space to discover who she was capable of becoming. And Imani's true inheritance wasn't material wealth. It was this, the knowledge that she could survive anything. The confidence that she was enough, all by herself. The freedom to build a life that brought her joy. That was worth more than any amount of money Nicole or Brandon could have stolen. Imani smiled as the fireworks reached their crescendo, painting the sky in brilliant colors. She raised her glass to the night, to the year ahead, to herself. "To true inheritance," she whispered. "To everything that really matters." Behind her, Carlos opened the door. "You okay out here?" "I'm perfect," Imani said, and meant it completely. "Come watch the fireworks with me." He wrapped his arms around her, and they stood together watching the sky light up, welcoming a new year and all the possibilities it held. Because this was her story now. Not Brandon's. Not Nicole's. Hers. And she was writing the next chapters exactly as she chose, with no one to answer to but herself, surrounded by people who truly loved her, doing work that mattered, and finally at peace with the beautiful, complicated, hard-won life she had built from the ashes of betrayal. Nicole had tried to take everything. But Imani had discovered that everything worth having couldn't be taken. It could only be earned, built, chosen, and claimed. And she had done all of that and more.